Hello and welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. And joining me is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Good to be here.
Great. Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes. And typically that is what we do here. But today we want to talk about some larger scale planning issues that concern the entire county and in some cases our entire Tampa Bay region. Our first topic is transit-oriented development. This is a big topic for Pinellas County, isn't it?
It is, very big one. And for years we've been focused on road building and moving around that way. But I think we see the future is different, the future being very transit-oriented. And so we're now putting together plans sort of see how we can move in that direction. So it's not just about the transportation part, it's also about how development would occur that would sort of match that rail transit or bus transit, that sort of thing. And so we're going to therefore look at how we can change our plan and our land use to be around those station areas, respond to the kind of development you need to make the rail work. But then in a way where if you get further away from the stations in other parts of the county, you won't be threatened by the pressure of development. So this is going to be more in the immediate area where the rail is and the transit. And then as you get further away, you could be sort of business as normal, maybe more accessible, easy to move around as a pedestrian, but you wouldn't necessarily have development pressure, that sort of thing.
And this is taking into account what they call intermodal transit as well.
Right, we are mixing all the modes together. And another thing is, of course, we're doing this, of course, because in energy concerns and where is our future with energy, it may not be all totally auto-driven in the future. It might still be auto with maybe different vehicles and different engines, but you're also going to have a lot more emphasis on what they call mass transit, where you move around in big groupings, so to speak.
And around those groupings are very pedestrian-friendly development and planning that goes into that.
Yeah, you'll have just a whole different way of traveling, so you'll be walking around or bicycling or having other smaller vehicles. As you know, there's also a mix in this, dealing with golf carts and other things. There's a lot of other ways we move around in the future that'll be different from now. But a lot of it has to do with then how would you adjust your development to make it work. Some of it might take minor tweaks to sort of just make it more accessible. And then again, around if you put a rail in, there is an expectation around the station areas as you've been in other areas what are built up. So then you might build up around those immediate areas where you've got the rail.
Well, we have a map that shows the suggested areas that...
This map here kind of shows you a little bit of the entire county. So this is the Clearwater area here, Tarpon Springs up here. And then this green shaded in area is where we're talking about the transit, the rail service. So you can see it starts up in the Clearwater area initially, runs down through the middle of the county, through the Gateway area, down into downtown St. Petersburg area, and then also crosses over into Tampa. This would be the rail service, and then there's expectations for rail service other places, but you have to start off small, so to speak, and then there would be other maps that show other transit service, connecting service that would bring you into this area for, riding the rail. But you might have other kinds of bus service all through the county, say, like shuttle bus service through the north part along Alta 19, similar to what you have along Gulf Boulevard as an example. And then express bus on US 19 initially, but there's going to be a lot more emphasis on this kind of rail kind of service and how it would be a game changer for us in just terms of how you move around. Probably the next slide might give you a little better idea about kind of the process we're doing to set things up, if you want to go into that.
Sure.
This one is kind of, we call it a bubble diagram, but Pinellas AA, that's alternative analysis. And alternative analysis means that you're looking at the details, almost at an engineering level, of basically how you design the system, what your technology is, and how much it costs to run, how much it costs to build, where it would be, and that sort of thing. That's an alternative analysis. That's a federal term. And once you've completed your alternative analysis, which takes maybe a year and a half, then basically you know your system, you know your costs and the rest. So alternative analysis and then transit-oriented development, that's a TOD. And so the first bubble we're looking at is, the first thing we have to do is, modify our comprehensive plans and put in our comprehensive plans policies that would basically encourage transit-oriented development, support the rail stations, identify, for instance, around the rail station what the density would be, the kind of development would occur around it. And then the last point is just what they call guidelines for development, just how the development would occur following that density and intensity around that station area. We'd put those station possibilities into the plan between now and the October timeframe. Then we're also beginning this alternative analysis that I mentioned that studies the rail. We'd come up with corridors and technology and station locations, and that's after about a year and a half. We'd then have that complete package identified. Then we're setting up to talk about going to a sales tax referendum where you might have a request to the public to say, would you be willing to spend 1 cent sales tax to basically put a system in like this and to run it for the next, whatever it is, 100 years, that sort of thing. So you complete that analysis, and then you go back into your comprehensive plan. Then it's okay. If the public thinks this is a good idea and says to go forward, then we start changing the plan, and we start moving over these stations packages over to where the stations are identified to be.
Okay.
And then you could start to get into the system. You'd start doing the rezonings and all that sort of thing, and start into a go position, so to speak.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, it should be. Really
Well, we have some examples of what the stations might look like.
This is one that just shows the station itself primarily, and then development in the background. In this case, you can see you've got a highway going through here, so you have to get over it with an overpass going over, and then the station location here, and then the rail's going to come up through there.
And this is an example of an employment center station, perhaps.
Industrial or employment area like that. So another slide to give you a little different angle on how the station could be designed. This is kind of a little bit different. You can see a big office building adjacent to the rail pulling up through here. You'd have other uses all surrounding it. The slide gives you this just one big building, but actually it's development all around it that makes it work. You're looking at anywhere from a quarter-mile to a half-mile area radius that you would have, higher development around a station area. And
there are different densities that we're talking about in different situations.
Right. So at different parts of the county, you might have a different kind of station. You might have one that's office-oriented, one that's maybe retail, the big mall in it, that sort of thing, or one that was even a park and ride where you just went to it. That's how you get on the system, parked your car, that sort of thing. Probably another slide might give us another example. This you can characterize more as a park and ride. It's sort of an example. You have bigger parking lots, but you'd have parking like this, maybe multi-story parking, then you go into the station, and you then take off to another destination on the rail line.
And they're also pointing out bike racks built in.
Yes, you can see you've got bike racks here. You've got people lined up waiting for the rail to come in here. It'll probably stop about there. So you've got a lot of pedestrian movement. You've got a lot of bike movement. You've just got a lot of movement around without being in the car.
And this one also brings in the bus transit as well.
Yes, it does. You can see the multi-stops there. You can see over here you got your bus dropping the people off that might have come in from North County or somewhere, and then cross over to get on the rail, one of these stations here.
And one of the key elements in all of these designs is pedestrian-friendly design.
Yes, it has to work with pedestrians because you're only on the transit vehicle for so long. The rest of the time you're a pedestrian or you're in some other kind of vehicle, so you have to be able to move around. And this is kind of a more close-up example. You can see here the people walking around. The vehicle came in here, it just now let the people off. They're now either crossing the landing here, going to other destinations on the other side. You can also see the development doesn't necessarily have to be real high. You can see here it's about three stories in that building there. And
looks like it's further out in the neighborhood.
It does, and it works is that where you really wouldn't necessarily find too natural around a station is a single-family typical house. You're not going to find that too much adjacent to a station. It's going to be more, this kind of townhouses or maybe more high-rise things. But it doesn't have to be a multi-story like 10 or 20-story buildings. You can also work a lot of development into a 3- and 4-story concept.
Well, some of the other benefits of this kind of planning is energy efficiency.
Right.
Isn't that correct? And moving away from, gasoline-powered vehicles.
Right.
Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I'd say that That's what our future is. I think that we'll be transitioning for a long time, because even the car itself will change and maybe start using other alternate fuels. So therefore, we're doing this transit, talking about this transit, because it is energy efficient to do that, because of course it's maybe electric powered or this sort of thing. But also you're going to find the other modes are also going to be energy efficient as well. But I think just the idea of our future is not everybody will want to own a car in the future, and therefore how would they be able to move around more conveniently? For instance, if you could go to and from work with just sitting doing something besides driving, like reading or talking to other people, that sort of thing. So I think it's going to be primarily environmental based, but it's also other reasons, just giving people alternatives for how to spend their time.
Right, and the idea of density sometimes takes on a negative connotation, when in fact this is really promoting environmentally friendly transit options, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I think what it's all about choices, not only in travel, but then how you live. Some people like the idea of being in a built-up area. Other people like the idea of some space around them. So in our county, you basically have both opportunities, which would be good.
Well, it's exciting for our future,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes.
All right. Our next topic is land development regulation, and this is as it pertains to the county code. And energy efficiency as well is part of that. Can you talk
Yes.
about that?
Well, we just recently got a grant. The county did a big block of money, and part of that money we blocked out to look at our development code. So basically, we weren't just talking about public facilities, but also private facilities we could look at that basically could be energy efficient or designed differently or transit-oriented development, all of that sort of thing. And looking at our code, because our code has been over 20 years since we've looked at it, our zoning code with all the other codes connected with the building code, so on like that. And the idea is to kind of look at them and say, well, how would you maybe buildings in the future either being retrofitted or being built new, how could they be more energy efficient? Is the position of them, should that be different with different materials, different designs? So basically you could save energy. And it's amazing how much energy you can save, sometimes 50% or more, by just doing things differently, either in a building or also doing some different layouts in the building. And then at the same time, we'd also be looking at how to have buildings and developments as very pedestrian friendly. At the present time now, you sometimes have to walk way out of your way, 3 blocks out of your way, just to get to the other side of a building. And so the idea is to have more pedestrian access to sort of be compatible with the transit again, because right now someone parks their car, they get in it, they get out of it, they go in where they're going, they get in their car and they drive off, and they may only drive a half a mile somewhere else where they could have walked maybe 300 feet, you know. And so the idea is to also kind of correct that. So it's going to be a major update to the code for those probably 2 reasons. More different, friendlier development in terms of pedestrian movement and maybe better public places and that sort of thing, and then also maybe more energy efficient.
And it does also state how Pinellas County feels about sustainability and endorsing that in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think we want to do is try to get more, well, I guess you said sustainable in the future, and sort of have sort of the county a better place than it is even now that we could leave behind. Because I think what we can look at is there's a lot better way we can have not only use our energy, but how we lay things, how we use the land, and how we use our environment. And we don't have to be really negative with it. There's a lot of ways, a lot of things we can do to make it better. But you know, also the code updating would even be dealing with other things like, for instance, people having gardens in their yard to grow plants, you know, and just a lot of different things to just make it more a friendly environment, so to speak.
What a process it must be to comb through. Is it going to be applied through every piece of the code, or is it an amendment to the code?
No, well, it'll go over through the whole code and then be amending it, be a one big amendment tied to it, yes.
Okay. How long does that typically take?
It's going to be 2 years, probably 1 year
years.
of just looking at all kinds of changes, identifying the text, and then another year of the adoption process, working through the public and sort of making changes based on what we get through public hearings, that sort of thing, input. And so after a couple of years, we'll then basically have a new code.
All right, Brian, these are 2 exciting issues to talk about.
Yes, and be a lot of work, too.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us again.
Good to be here.
All right. Well, please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello and welcome to another Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us again, Brian.
Good to be here again.
Great. Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes. These issues will be public hearing items during an upcoming Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting. You ready to get started?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Our first item is a zoning change from R3 Single Family Residential to P1A Limited Office District on approximately 0.39 acres located on the north side of Curlew Road and west of Fisher Road in Palm Harbor. There's also a request for a land use change from residential urban to residential office limited. So tell us about this one.
This is just to keep people oriented. North County area, this is US 19 and Belcher. So this sits between Belcher and US 19 on Curlew Road. We go to the next slide. Here's Curlew Road, again with Belcher on this side and US 19 on this side. And there's been recent road improvements through here, sort of fixing the road up, giving it wider capacity and adding a median in the middle, sort of limiting how people maneuver. And then on the north side, you could see all this aerial photography of a mixture of houses and office through on both sides. So it's kind of a very established area in terms of structures that are built. But it's also somewhat low intensive, more like a single family type of structure, if you know what I mean, a sort of house type of structure. We go to the next slide and I think you'll see a little more what the question is. So then, even though you saw a mixture of different structures, it's pretty much shown as this yellow as residential through the whole corridor, except for a couple of designations of office at this end. And so earlier, what we had talked about is, and then this is the proposal here to go from this residential to, again, an office designation. And you would normally say, well, why would you do that in an area that looks like it's very residential?
Right.
But actually, we recognize this is along Curlew Road, and there's a mixture of uses you might permit and find acceptable along there just because the nature of the road between Belcher and US 19. So the proposal was made to put office here, and I believe we have a policy set up that would be receptive to looking at office through this area, assuming that people put the parcels together so they met the minimum requirements of what an office district would call for. So this, therefore, was a proposal to put an office in, put a couple, you can't see it, but there's actually putting two parcels together and then meeting the requirements of an office district and then putting an office proposed for there that the board would take up.
Okay. Any other issues with this one?
Not really, and again, because the road improvement went through here and it put a barrier sort of limiting things, therefore you aren't going to have a lot of intensive development, say retail development or stores and things like that through here because you can't easily get to and from the sites.
Okay. All right. Our next item is a request for a zoning change from C2 General Retail Commercial and Limited Services to P1 General Professional Office on approximately 0.86 acres located on the east side of 66th Street North and south of 54th Avenue North in St. Petersburg.
Okay, we're going down to the south area down here in the sort of, if you want to see the general Layleman area. And then this is 54th Avenue up here, and this being 66th Street. So basically what we're looking at is, you can see the area is also very well established all through here, and you can see a lot of commercial establishments and this sort of thing, and it's a very busy road. And so if we go to the next slide, you'll see what the proposal to change is. And it's taking, it actually has commercial zoning on it. But you can see the whole area is purple, which is an office designation. So therefore, the commercial really isn't, even though you got the commercial zoning permitting stores and retail, you really can't do that in this office category. So we basically, this proposal would clean up, if you want to call it the zoning, and have the zoning match the office designation. So basically they're going to go from the C2 commercial, they call it, to the P1, which is professional office. So then basically they'll be able to get a permit, because right now they're limited in terms of what they can do. And it's on 66th Street, which is acceptable. You've already got a lot of commercial on there. And you also have office, so this kind of provides some choices in the corridor.
All right. That was self-explanatory. Our last request going before the board is for a zoning change from AEW, Agricultural Estate Residential Wellhead Protection Overlay, to FBRW, Facility-Based Recreation Wellhead Protection Overlay, and PCW, Preservation Conservation Wellhead Protection Overlay, on approximately 94.54 acres located on the north side of Old Keystone Road east of Keller Circle and the Keller Water Treatment Facility in Tarpon Springs.
Yeah, so we call it Tarpon Springs, probably the mailing address, but it's up here in the northeast area, over in East Lake almost. This is Keystone Road, so you're way up in the northeast part of the county. We'll probably go to the next slide. And one of the things this triggers is there's a big piece of property all through the west, over 100 acres, that was the wild property that the county bought. And most of it they put into a preservation category to keep it undeveloped. But then part of it they actually designated for recreation purposes, and that was this parcel here, which is north of here's Keystone Road and here's Old Keystone Road, and then some ball fields over in here. So we're therefore looking at this parcel would be therefore used and designated on the plan as recreation and recreation open space, but the zoning, now we're taking the zoning action to match up with that. So that's what this case here is, they call it facility-based recreation. And this category would then allow for some ball fields on a limited basis being put onto this property and used for recreation purposes, I believe, to work with the recreation group that operates in the North County area. And so, however, we'll be recognizing some wetland areas here, and also the property access will probably come up through like this and then go in from the north to minimize the impact on the residential to the south, so some things like that. But the main thing it's to provide some more recreation in the North County area. But most of the property that was for the wild property is all pretty much in preserve, with just this piece here because it was tucked over to the west and separated from the other preserve properties that was permitted to say, okay, we can have this as recreation, assuming to admit certain things. I think one was put in the plan as a buffer provided for here, a 300-foot buffer, which then protects the residential to the south, that sort of thing.
And the wellhead protection part of this category?
Wellhead protection is many years ago, over 20 years ago, when we first set up this program. We also were required to actually have a wellhead protection ordinance put in place as well. And so therefore there's a lot of water resource up in this area, underground water that we're pumped. And so what you want to do is make sure that when it rains and the water recharges down in from the rain, it doesn't go into and sort of pick up pollutants and take them down into the ground. So therefore, that's what we call a wellhead ordinance. So any uses that are permitted up all through this whole area have to be scrutinized in terms of, say, like a gas station would be a frowned on use as an example, because that gas line could wind up in the aquifer for the water source. So, so we check that, make sure that so it's in conformance with the well field protection ordinance, and but that's again like all the other properties in the area.
All right, that's interesting. All right, now we're going to switch gears and discuss some proposed amendments to the Pinellas County Comprehensive Plan supporting transit-oriented development. Now, we've talked about this before, but there's further discussion we want to do.
Yes, correct. And I think what we're talking about is, because this is such a different thing, we're looking at going from highway-based land use discussion to basically transit-based land use discussions, which means that development would be really different, and it would be not only people being able to move around easier as a pedestrian from one part of a property to another or from adjacent properties without having to get in the car, you'd also be able to use transit as well. I think the next slide kind of shows the bigger picture of that. This again is the overall, this is the whole of Pinellas County, and then the green shows where we're looking at a rail type of system that's being evaluated now, and it could go from downtown Clearwater through the gateway area down into downtown St. Pete, with a crossing over to Tampa. And then in through that area is where we then would be permitting a more intensive type of development along the station areas, with primarily the idea of having that where the impact is in terms of land use changes. Then it means the balance of the county wouldn't necessarily have this pressure. They could be kind of having stable development, and they wouldn't have any surprises with some big intensity things showing up in their backyard. But along this corridor, we had focused that future development. So basically, it would be compatible with the rail. It would also be where you'd want to have it with the rail. But again, you'd sort of be able to have your cake, you need it too, so to speak, where you'd be able to have a lot of development, future development, but it wouldn't be at the expense of neighborhoods and pressures and things like that.
And what we're talking about when we say the development along these corridors are pedestrian friendly, and mixed use, as in residential and business uses. Can you describe what would take place along there?
Well, two things. One would be your development would have would be easy for you to walk around in and move around in without having to get in your car and go from one parking lot to the next. The other thing is you'd be able to get to and from the transit very easily. And so what you'd then do is to have two things. Not only would you do that, you'd also have these uses mixed. So if you lived in the corridor, you might be able to actually walk to the store or walk to a place you need to go to. So you'd actually have it laid out what they call mixed use for that reason. So you'd have shorter distance to walk to different things. So, that would be in that corridor. Now, we'd also have that same concept in other places, but you might have to walk a little further.
Right, right. And also, you're looking at providing for employment centers along the rail or the transit corridor.
What you're looking at is this would be then our intensive development. This is where you'd have multi-story buildings and also more high-rise residential, and you have a focus. Plus, you'd have also a lot of attractors in there, cultural facilities and things like that, where people would want to be. So you'd have all of your where the action is, so to speak, along through this corridor here. Again, on an intensive basis, then you'd have less intensive things in the balance of the county.
And other methods of transportation, buses.
Oh, for sure.
And would feed into that corridor.
You know, like you'd have the trolley service that you have here out on the beach, which is very successful. Continue that trolley service up all to 19 as an example. That kind of service doesn't exist now. You'd have express bus service on US 19 at a high level. You'd have those kind of emphasized, what they call BRT, bus rapid transit service along Central Avenue out to the beaches. You'd have those kind of services in addition to rail, so you'd have enhanced transit everywhere, and then you'd also want to have the land use kind of compatible with that. So basically, people would be able to find a way to get from when they get off the bus or get off the transit vehicle, they'd be able to get to where they wanted to go without having to deal with walls and limits and things like that. Because so many times now you have, we've been working on it for years, but there's a lot of places where you get on a sidewalk and you walk a few hundred feet, then you have to stop.
It's not there.
Yeah, that's right.
You have to cross the road and find another one.
Or get in the road or go through a parking lot. So we're sort of trying to improve all that. So that all kind of goes together.
Okay.
And some of it even makes sense even without transit.
Yes. Yeah, it does. It really does. Well, this is exciting.
Yes, it's going to be cool.
Moving forward,
Yes,
right?
moving forward.
All right. All right, as we mentioned earlier, the public hearing items we discussed are scheduled to be heard during the public hearing portion of the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting beginning at 6:30 p.m. on August 24th. Please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello and welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Hi, good to be here.
Great. Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes. And that is typically what we do here. But today we want to talk about some larger scale planning issues. Our first topic is the Land Development Regulation Project, or LDR. This is an interesting one, isn't it?
Yes, it is, at least to some people.
To planners like you, right?
It has to do with way back in, I think, the 1950s, 1957, the county established a zoning code. And then we've followed that ever since, and it defines what you can do with your land, and then a lot of other code regulations have been tied to that. And then there was a major upgrade of that code in around 1990. So then it's the last it's been looked at. So therefore, this is now, after 20 years, a first real good look at the code with all of the new things that we have that are new issues. And I think we've got a graphic to show the timing on it. Basically, you're looking at, see here, we're about August here in 2012, and you've got 20-some tasks we're going to look at here, and then finish in roughly 2 years from now. And through all this process have focus groups and public hearings and doing different issues. We had the opportunity to also have a consultant to work with us on this. We got a federal grant of what they call Energy and Efficiency Community Block Grant, and over $350,000 to work with. So it's going to be a major effort to do it. One of the things is, for instance, how people develop their land is different from the way it was 20 or 30 years ago. Now you're more concerned about energy efficiency, maybe better accessibility for pedestrians. And also we have this whole new issue in the county about, not issue, opportunity you could say, for transit. And if you were to have a major rail station come in, then what would that development control need to be to make the development better suited around the rail station? And for that matter, when you run bus lines and you have bus stops, how would you get the people to and from the bus stops better, and what kind of development should be around the bus stops? So there's a lot of that will go into this. And then the idea of people more concerned about energy efficiency. And then you'd have also the code looking at that. Is it building placement better that would be more energy efficient? And also just how you build a building. So there's a lot of new issues like that that are ones that we've never looked at. And now we need to look at ensuring that we've built sort of energy efficient public buildings, but now how do we ensure that the private ones are also that way? And probably the other part is that it's not necessarily something that's going to cost people more. It's a matter of doing things differently, more energy efficient and different layouts. I don't think the intent is to have this regulation cost more for development, but it's more a matter of maybe even do it cheaper, that sort of thing.
And so typically, how is this going to impact the average person?
It could impact the average person in a couple of ways. Mainly is the buildings they go into, either where they're shopping or they're working or where they're living a house, the regulations that apply to those buildings would then be modified. And so that when those buildings are replaced or modified, they'd be modified in a way that was, again, more responsive to the issues I talked about, livability and energy efficiency, that sort of thing. So it would be something that would be over time. It's not going to, people wouldn't probably notice it right away unless you were building a house the following year or a store or something. You then notice it, but it's going to be gradual over time.
Okay. And our next topic is about the post-disaster plan, and there's an impact there as well.
There really is, because we're looking at then is, like I was mentioning, you said, well, how quickly would this occur? Well, if a storm came through, we had some major disaster, then it probably would happen a lot quicker, because you'd have buildings that'd be replaced and structures replaced. And so therefore, what we wanted to do is, and I think the next graphic will kind of show that, is we're kind of laying out a plan here, and you can see this is kind of like a circular type of situation. The pre-disaster is we deal with a lot of things about anticipating what could happen. And then you go through, we need to develop a plan on which to respond to pre-disaster, and then this disaster occurs, a hurricane comes through. All the responses about what you do on an emergency basis to respond to getting people food and water and moving people out of the area or in the area, setting up hospitals, that sort of thing. And then after all that's occurred, then you go into post-disaster, and this is then, okay, now everybody's safe, they're taken care of, and you've got all that covered. Maybe it's a few weeks later or a few months later. Then you deal with, okay, now we've got all this destroyed structures and vacant land and things change around a lot. Then when you want to put things back, how are you going to put them back? You're going to put them back the same way they were before, or do you want to change some things? So this whole post-disaster thing deals with that, which was, how are we going to put things back? Should we put them back the same way, lower density or density here versus there, and a lot of that? So it's kind of, and we have to have thought that out now, because you can't start thinking about that after the storm, because everybody's in a rush to, how can I get my house rebuilt? How can I get a permit to do something? So you want to have thought about that way before it happens.
So what kind of issues are you working on right now with that?
Well, actually, it's a whole spectrum of issues. It's everything. We've got all the people at the table, from law enforcement one end to code enforcement to builders to fire people. It's just the whole spectrum of things, even the traffic control. And what we're trying to do is have all these different people in their disciplines figure out, well then, if a storm comes through and say we have disaster problems, then how would we have a plan to get things back in operation again? And again, maybe it's an opportunity to, say, do things right, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's a matter of just putting it back the way it was before because it was correct. But again, it's everything from housing to shopping centers, to public buildings, and then all the infrastructure, the water, the sewer systems you have that you need, that you count on, the power systems, putting those back in place. If you think about it, you want to have kind of put in place a plan for how you would do all that before it happens.
Right. In the case of a hurricane, it's a negative occurrence, but it does present opportunities for improving and potentially improving your resistance to a future event like a hurricane.
It does. Well, it's two things. One is you want to, first of all, make sure that you can just put things back, that you've got services there for people. And for instance, you have the people move back in, but suppose there's no stores, as an example. So you want to make sure that you have all of it coming back, and you want to make sure, how do you work your code so that maybe you can do these things quicker than before.
Okay.
But you also don't want to have a lot of temporary things go in that all of a sudden haunt us for years. So it's kind of, it's talking generally, but there is a lot of things to deal with in a program like this. But I think the idea is to not have what you had in, say, some of the areas like Louisiana, some areas like that, where they had all these issues and they never foresaw what would happen until it happened.
And this work is going on through the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council?
Yeah, what we've got is actually they're assisting us with some staff work on it, but basically we have the parks directors, the housing people for the county, the public works people, the utilities and all that. And also it's a joint venture with the county and the cities. So it's because, you know, some of these issues do not recognize jurisdiction lines. So therefore it's a joint venture. So it's a pretty big effort, you know. And
how long is this planning going on?
I think we've got it laid out for about the next year to 2 years to do it. It's going to take us a little bit longer than we originally thought because we've had a lot of budget reductions, limitations on departments that are going to have to be spending time on this, so it's going to take us a bit longer than we'd want. But I'd say probably it's going to take the better part of 2 years to get it together.
Okay. All right. Well, Brian, thank you very much for joining us today.
Good. Hope we were helping people out.
Oh, me too. Me too. All right. Thank you for joining us, and please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello and welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
It's good to be here.
Great. Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes. These issues will be public hearing items during an upcoming Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting. You ready to get started, Brian?
Yes, sure am.
Okay. Our first item is a zoning change from R4, 1, 2, and 3 family residential to C2 general retail, commercial, and limited services on approximately half an acre located on the west side of 33rd Street, south of 64th Avenue North in unincorporated Pinellas Park. All right, tell us about this one, Brian.
Sure. Well, first of all, we're looking at way almost down in the South County area here, just north of St. Petersburg. You can probably go to the next slide. We'll see a little more. You can see you're looking at, this is a very kind of commercialized area, and this is the properties right here on the aerial, and this is being 64th here, and this being, I think it's, what is that, 34th Street or US 19. And so you probably go to the next slide, you'll see the designations that we're talking about. you can see this, all of this is commercial. So you could see, even though it's like what they call residential zoning of R4, permitting the duplex and the triplex in there, all of it around it is commercial, as well as on the plan it's commercial. So the idea is to match the zoning up of this property with the plan designation. Then I think there's some residences that would stay there as non-conforming and can stay there until eventually the uses change on the property.
Okay, and this is just for future use of the property, I understand.
Right, right. And again, we always try to line up the zoning with the plan as much as we can, because then people, or else people can't get permits and that sort of thing.
All right. Our next item is a request for a zoning change from R4, 1, 2, and 3 family residential to CP1 Commercial Parkway on approximately 0.16 acres located on the east side of Madison Avenue, south of Ulmerton Road in unincorporated Largo. All right.
Yes, here's Ulmerton Road, and we're sort of just a little bit north of Lake Seminole area. Go to the next slide. We can see here's an aerial photograph here. Here's the railroad tracks going across Ulmerton Road to get you oriented, and here's the R4 property that's going to the what we call the CP1, the Commercial Parkway designation. And I think the next slide kind of gives you a better feel for what's happening. All this yellow is the residential, and then this purple is the ROR, we call it residential office retail, and then the commercial over here, the red, sort of red colors or orange colors. So the idea is to again match this R4 zoning up with the RR in front of it. And I believe to then sort of open up the opportunity for a little more commercial holistically, where you can have better parking for the commercial in front, that sort of thing.
So there's a lot of commercial along Ulmerton Road. This is in Largo area near the Largo Mall, and they purchased that property and now they want to expand into parking there to solve some issues there. So. All right. Okay. Our next request is for a zoning change from R4, 1, 2, and 3 family residential to P1 general professional office, and a request for a land use change from residential low medium to residential office general on approximately 0.13 acres located on the south side of 54th Avenue North, east of 28th Street North in unincorporated St. Petersburg.
Right, we're down in the north of the St. Petersburg literal area here, you can see. The next slide gives us a better idea of things. Here's 54th Avenue North and Haynes Road. US 19's over here a little bit to the west. So you can see you're along an area here that's kind of established as a sort of a corridor where you wouldn't normally have residential along it. So the idea is then to sort of expand the office a little bit, and probably in the next slide you can see that you've got opportunity to do this. This is the office here, this pink purple designation. The idea of extending it a little bit to the west to sort of provide an opportunity for office development along the corridor, which we think is eventually going to occur even further to the west.
So this is a transitioning area.
Right.
All right.
Yes.
Our next item is a request for a conditional use to allow an outdoor vegetative solid waste facility in a C3 zoning district on approximately 5.09 acres located on the west side of US Highway 19 at the intersection with Whitney Road in unincorporated Clearwater. Now this was an interesting case.
Yes, it was. It's again, here's US 19, and you're in the general vicinity in the middle of the county, roughly the Clearwater area. I think the next case shows. Now what this talking about is you've got the right zoning and everything else, but the C3, but we have a conditional use requirement that goes to the county commission where you're trying to do some more things that normally aren't permitted in C3, and one of them is a sort of transfer type of function, where basically what they want to do is have on this site, have trucked in and recognize in an area, take vegetation, drop it off, and sort of build it up there, and then leave it there for a day or so, and then haul it all off at one time. So you might have maybe landscaping activities all through the area. They come drop the landscape off here in this designated area, let it build up for a while, then one truck goes in and hauls it all off at one time to the resource plant. And again, it's vegetative debris, that sort of thing, shrubbery, things like that.
And a conditional use can be, it's not applied to the entirety of the property. These are with conditions.
Right.
So can you explain that?
So like you've got something like, I think about a 60 by 30 parcel of on the property, sort of set away from the residential, where basically you could set conditions on what time of the day the activity is, and any other limitations in terms of height, that sort of thing, any keeping noise down, that sort of thing. And the idea is it would be pretty much toward the front of the property, so it wouldn't affect any surrounding area. And apparently but you can see it's a smaller use compared to the entire property itself, but it does provide a way to more efficiently sort of, instead of trucks going all the way back and forth over to resource recovery, them kind of piling it up here and then taking it all in one trip down.
So the next slide shows.
Oh yeah, the next slide is the plan designation. This is the commercial, so you can see you're in an appropriate commercial area, and then you've got the right zoning with the C3, so it's more a conditional use that ramps up the activity a little bit. But even you can see this activity isn't really intrusive into the neighborhood because it's you're just kind of doing vegetation, you're not doing any other kind of trash, debris, or construction materials or anything like that. This is pretty much vegetation.
And there's not going to be any noise issues from that
Not that much, no.
Great. All right, our next item is a request for a zoning change from AEW, Agricultural Estate Residential Wellhead Protection, to RPD 2.5W, Residential Plan Development Wellhead Protection, and RPD 1.0W, Residential Plan Development Wellhead Protection, on approximately 14.9 acres located on the east side of East Lake Road in Palm Harbor.
Yes, this one has generated some debate in the community, but what you got is the North County area. This is East Lake Road and Tampa Road here, so you're way north of Oldsmar up along East Lake Road in the East Lake area. Next slide kind of shows you, this is the shopping center to the south with Target and everything is down here. This is East Lake Road with the overpass going over, I believe it's Tampa Road. And this is a parcel of land here, very much vegetated, that was originally envisioned as a school site. But because we had a lot of environmental sensitivity on it, the school system decided not to pursue that for a school site. So therefore it wound up being thought of as for residential development. So it was originally platted and laid out here for 4 lots for development. And the proposal now is to change it to the RPD, both 1 on one side here, and then RPD 2.5 on the other, meaning the density 2.5 units an acre and 1 unit an acre. The intent is to propose to develop here 20 units, 20 housing on this property. And there's a very sensitive piece of property with a lot of wetland on it, that sort of thing. And there's been a lot of flooding in this entire area. So there's a lot of discussion about this site. And so the proposal was for the RPD 2.5 and 1, and then in addition to that, now we've got you can see it's institutional because that would have been originally the school designation, and then it's going to actually have a combination of RPD 1 and RPD 2.5 on it, with the idea of also they propose some variances for setbacks and things like that with the property. That's the request. And that's when it goes to the county commission. You're going to have obviously some people are in the surrounding area have concern about impacts, that sort of thing.
Right.
And there's been some flooding in the area, so we're going to have to sort of work out how this proposal can be accepted in light of all those issues.
And the wellhead protection designation, can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the wellhead ordinance the county put on the books over 20 years ago now was even a state requirement, and we put a wellhead protection ordinance in almost the entire North County on this side of the lake, and it protects the aquifer that's underneath all the ground, and it prevents, it sort of monitors and prevents pollutants going in. So for instance, you don't get it too much here, but if you were to put, especially if you were to put chemicals, like if you had a gas station or a lot of lawn control chemicals, that sort of thing, that's the kind of stuff you watch out here. And so the ordinance kind of makes sure the uses don't trigger and sort of up the situation of having those kind of spills occur into the aquifer.
Right. A protection for our environment.
Yes, correct. Right.
All right, now we're going to switch gears and discuss some proposed amendments to the Pinellas County Comprehensive Plan that will go before the board. The first is an annual update of the capital improvements element of the Pinellas County Comprehensive Plan. Tell us about this.
Yeah, this one is an annual element, and we have 2 things called capital, and one is the capital improvement program, which the county adopts every year, and in fact all local governments do, and it's an improvement program for usually 5 years, sometimes 6 years, and it documents all the improvements you make, everything from road improvements to water, sewer, you name it, parks improvements like that. And that's a budget document. But then also we're required in the comprehensive plan to have an element called the capital improvement element. And in that you have another 5 or 6 year requirement where you basically document the different improvements. But in this case, it's not a budget document. In this case, it's a planning document. So you've looked at all these improvements, the parks improvements, the road improvements, and you kind of name it, the government would do. And then we check to make sure those things are consistent with the rest of the plan. So it's kind of a little different requirement. One is a budget document, this one's a planning document. And also we're required to make sure that it sounds obvious, but that the capital improvement element is cost feasible, meaning that there's money available for the improvements you're putting in. It sounds obvious, but that's still a requirement in state law that you have to do. So we have to do that every year. So what we usually do is, after the capital improvement element is done, then we develop this element instead, capital improvement element, and run that through the adoption process. And it's a little bit redundant, but we still have to do it. And so that's what we're doing now. So now that the budget's adopted and we know what the projects are, we're now putting it in the element of the plan.
Okay, I'm glad you understand that. Our final item is a proposed amendment to the future land and use and quality communities element of the comprehensive plan, supporting transit-oriented development. Now, Brian, this is a very interesting thing. It's ongoing, isn't it?
Right. It's ongoing, and it's pretty much the vogue subject these days. All local governments are talking about it, and we have the T-BART organization looking at regional transit. Our MPO has got a major initiative with their partners, with the Transit Authority and State DOT and T-BART, looking at rail and all this sort of thing in our county, and also looking at bus improvements. And the idea is that it's a two-sided thing. You not only can look at the transportation side, meaning the providing of the rail and where it goes, and the bus, but also what happens with development along those corridors or in the station areas. And you want to make sure that the development is sort of compatible and works with the transit, so it's easy to get to and from the station and around the station. So the idea is you then have to modify your regulations and your plan categories and the rest of your policies to sort of make sure development does occur compatibly around there. So you might ramp up the densities around the station areas, but then you also not only want to deal with density, but how do you get easy access and move around, because when people start walking around, you can't have them walk 1,000 feet when they really are only 100 feet away from something. So you want to make sure it's a very efficient layout. So it does require us to change a lot, especially the rail part. So we're right now working with our local planning agency, the LPA, to sort of develop some recommendations that the County Commission can take up. We've sent a package up to the Department of Community Affairs that has got all these policies in it about how we work with, again, a good pedestrian access and how we do layouts that are, and densities, what appropriate densities there'd be for the different stations. So it's all a package that we're putting together that we think works, and it also means that you actually have to do it consistent with the rest of the plan. So it makes it pretty comprehensive. But the idea is to sort of have some parts of the county where you would have the rail, with then related densities and development to them, and then you'd have other parts of the county where you wouldn't have the rail, that basically would not have that same density pressure. They would be business as normal, so to speak. Those neighborhoods would not be pressured and threatened.
Right. I think we have the map to show the corridors that are...
Yeah, so what I guess I'm saying is, so therefore you would have a lot of development occurring here through the county, matching up with the rail, but that in other parts of the county, you then would have normal development. What you want to do is new pressure development that requires density, you want to put that where the rail would be, and then have the rest of the county kind of have normal development, normal levels of development compatible with what's normally there now, that sort of thing, or what's acceptable to the community. So that's the kind of thing we're writing. So we're probably writing rules now to focus on the kind of land use to be in that area.
And some of these uses will be mixed, encouraging residential and businesses to mix in higher densities around those corridors.
Yeah, the idea is you mix them so you don't have as far to walk between the different uses, between your residential and your commercial and your employment, that sort of thing. You want to minimize the distance people, because now people are walking if they're not on the rail, theoretically.
So we're trying to get the horse before the cart, as
you could say that, yeah. Now this is still a work in progress, not only in the next few months, but also there's what they call the alternative analysis, where we're looking at through this green area where the rail should go and how many stations it would be, what the technology is, all those questions. And that's going to probably take us a year to a year and a half to sort out. So it's very likely through that process, the end of it, we'd have to revisit the land use and kind of say, well, now that we know more, we need to do it differently, and revisit the whole development regulations
where
again.
it's really going to be and
Correct.
focus those
Right,
areas.
Right, right.
Well, that's an exciting process, I bet.
It is. It's going to be really quite different.
Uh-huh. Well, Brian, thanks for joining us again.
Good.
To have you.
Good to be here.
As we mentioned earlier, the public hearing items we discussed are scheduled to be heard during the public hearing portion of the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting beginning at 6:30 p.m. on October 26th. Please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello and welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Good to be here.
Great to have you. Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes. These issues will be public hearing items during an upcoming Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting. Well, we start today with a proposed zoning change for a property on Park Boulevard. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, correct. This is on Park Boulevard between Starkey Road and Belcher Road. And it's a proposal for basically commercial development. I think we've got a map showing it. And it's roughly a little less than 20 acres of land. And it's pretty much going to be identified to be commercial. It's proposed for C2 zoning, what we call residential office retail. That's the plan designation for it. Mm-hmm. And the idea is to permit a large amount of commercial on this road that's kind of has a lot of stress in terms of traffic at either end, either intersection at both Starkey and Belcher. So there's some concern about how to work the traffic out, as well as the fact that the area is also low. Mm-hmm. This used to be a mobile home park that was part of an original proposal, a few years ago, and all the mobile home parks were pulled off. But it's still an area that has to be treated for how to handle the drainage. So it should be kind of something that's going to take some sorting out. It's got some issues with it.
And handling the drainage, that's a part of the planning process, isn't it?
Correct. You want to make sure you put something on the plan and on the zoning that basically can work. But then also, usually the drainage itself then actually gets worked through on the site plan process that follows the rezoning or the plan change.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Now we're going to discuss some proposed ordinances amending Pinellas County's Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan. The first is a proposed ordinance amending the Land Development Code, adopting the annual concurrency test statement. Now, Brian, what is an annual concurrency test statement?
Well, what it's done, it is kind of deals with the term concurrency, where you basically have to make sure, and this is a requirement that came out of the 1980s, and had to do with you can't permit development unless services are there for it. Water, sewer, transportation, solid waste facilities, parks, so on like that. And that's the concept behind it. It's kind of a heading of managed growth. So the best way to organize that as these projects come in, as all these different development projects come in, you want to basically test them against, well, are adequate facilities around. And so what we do is we thought, well, rather than do this case by case, we'll on an annual basis come up with a test statement that assesses, based upon all the development that's occurred the last year or several years, how is the water system doing, how is the sewer system doing, how is solid waste, and what is the road network like. So basically when a project comes in, we can then look at this annual test statement and we can say, okay, the road in this area is stressed, so this project is going to have to solve some problems with the road, or and it isn't too likely these days, but if the water system or the sewer system may have a problem in that area, may not have the capacity to it. That's the concept behind it. And there's an annual test statement that documents that. So when a project comes in, a person comes in with a proposal in the door, we'll be able to look at the map and look at the test statement and say, well, you have a problem or you don't. That's the idea behind it.
Well, speaking of a map, we do have a map to show where those the concurrencies are on board here.
You can see this map here. All the red lines are ones where there's a problem with some form of congestion, and the road is therefore constrained. Like you can see, we were speaking earlier, like you look at Park Boulevard here as an example, some sections of McMullen Booth Road, alternate 19, you can go around the county, Gulf to Bay. Those different roads means that you want to be careful what you put along that road because you're impacting it. And you can see most, actually, large number of our sort of roads we rely on are that way. US 19 with all of its improvements to it is in good shape, actually.
Well,
even though it's got a lot of cars on it. Some places you probably eventually wind up with 100,000 cars on it, but it's designed to handle way more than that. So, but what we do is then we can use this map, and if someone's on this map in a certain location, if they're in one of those constrained areas, then we know we have to sit down with the people that have that project and say, okay, you need to solve the traffic problem in your area. Come up with some extra things to sort of help the system out a little bit. Maybe you might have bus stops, and you might even do some extra lanes in and out, or whatever it might be, or you might even sometimes have them do some extra sidewalk section, that sort of thing.
That's so interesting what you do. That's interesting. All right. Our next discussion is a proposed ordinance amending the future land use and quality communities element of the Pinellas County Comprehensive Plan regarding transit-oriented development.
Yes, this is a project and a name that they call it TOD, Transit-Oriented Development, that people are getting used to the term now. But it has to do with, as we see in our future, a lot more transit. And we're even talking about at some point in the future, pretty soon, scheduling a referendum similar to what Hillsborough has done to look at whether we can get additional revenue to supply or underwrite the transit we have to do. But anticipating that, we therefore wanted to have development that's compatible with the transit, so people, if they get off the bus or the rail, they'll be able to walk around. And you don't want to walk around for 2 miles to get somewhere real simply. So therefore you want to have the development designed in a way where it's easy to move around and walk around once you get off the transit vehicle. That's why they call it transit-oriented development. It usually means that a lot of the development is very pedestrian-oriented. And then there's two kinds of what they call TOD, or transit-oriented development. The one kind is where you've got some extra density thrown in and you're trying to really get more trips on the rail, so therefore you have a higher density around the station area. That's one kind. The other is where you're just trying to you're not raising the density. In this case, you're just trying to facilitate how people move around. And I think what we're trying to do is two things. Have development that supports the rail and have that along the corridor to support it. But then also protect other areas of the county so they're not unduly impacted. So basically existing or established development or neighborhoods won't be impacted by it. They'll stay the way they are. So it's kind of doing the both.
Well, we have a map that shows the proposed corridors that we're talking about.
This is in fact the corridor. You can see it runs from the Clearwater area down through the Gateway area down into the St. Petersburg downtown area, with then a line running over to the Tampa on the Howard Franklin Bridge. So this is the general area that we're talking about locating the rail. And that means then that's the area where we'd then have a number of stations along this corridor as well. We're doing an evaluation of that this current year, about for a little over a year and a quarter, something like that, trying to locate, if you did a rail line, where would you put it? And then also where would the stations be, how feasible would it be, and then of course determining the cost of it and things like that. And getting ourselves into a position where we'd be able to have enough information to go to a referendum, again, for a proposal to underwrite it with the funding source. But I think the idea is to sort of therefore have development that's going to be a little bit different from where it is now. In the past, we've had traditional, like a shopping center with the parking lot out the front. Well, that doesn't work with the transit.
Right.
You've got to be, you're not walking through several acres of parking to get to where you want to go. You've got a whole different situation.
Right. And sometimes people hear the words higher density and development, and they don't have a good connotation at times. One positive net effect of these corridors is that it will attract businesses to that corridor and maybe alleviate some of the business that's lingering in the community.
That's correct.
and that could be possible.
Yeah, so therefore, you can see we'd be focusing development on the green area, primarily around the station areas, where the balance of the county would have then normal growth. They wouldn't be pressed by all this, if you want to say, increase in density and we need to make things work, that sort of thing, because they'll have the normal development, and basically your established neighborhoods wouldn't be pressured to kind of have something happen they wouldn't like.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's interesting.
Yep, so it's in our future somewhere.
Yes, coming up. Our last item is also a proposed ordinance amending the future land use map category descriptions and rules of the future land use and quality communities element of the Pinellas County Comprehensive Plan. Tell us about this.
Yeah, it's just mainly just two things. One is we're looking at primarily the industrial category, and if we introduce that into a mixed use, they call it, we have a multitude of uses to it. We just want to introduce the fact that we have to have a master plan that goes with that. So it's sort of a techie kind of amendment. It's not really one that too many people are going to, be able to follow too much or get too much into. And then the other is there's a procedure called transfer of development rights, where basically you would, in a project, you would move development intensity from one side of the project to the other. But it's all in the same project, the same area developed by the same person. But that if you did move it from one plan category to another, but in the same project, that where you move it to, it can't exceed 25% of what's already there. It's a sort of cap, so that basically you can't move all the development to one side of the project and be right up against single family and have this 10-story building or something beside it. You're only going to be able to increase that area by 10%, by 25%.
Is this when maybe a development is aggregating multiple properties and putting them together with different land uses applied to them?
Correct.
So,
but it's all under, but it's also, again, it's not just they have to be one project. It all needs to be, but they might be one project, but they might be different land use categories within it. You might have, say, a medium density here and low density there. So if you're transferring some units from the medium density to the lower density that's adjacent to other low density, you want to make sure you minimize the impact of those people. So that's what, it's sort of just a procedure to sort of make sure you kind of stabilize what's happening so someone just doesn't move everything and create all kinds of impacts that no one wants.
Well, it's fascinating as always. Well, thank you, Brian, for being here.
It's good to be here and go over things.
Yeah, great. As we mentioned earlier, the public hearing items we discussed are scheduled to be heard during the public hearing portion of the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting beginning at 6:30 p.m. on November 30th. Please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello and welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me is Brian Smith, Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Good to be here.
Good. Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes. And that is what we typically do here. But today, we want to talk about upcoming plans for the Fred Marquis Pinellas Trail. Brian, I know that there's an anniversary that's very important coming up.
Right, there's a 20th anniversary for the Pinellas Trail. And 20 years ago, this month, December, the Pinellas Trail was constructed, or actually you could say we began construction. And then it's taken us years to fill in gaps and that sort of thing. And what was interesting was it's a classic example of what they call rail to trail, in that it was an old rail line where they had pulled up the tracks, and it was just a 34-mile corridor through the whole county, that basically from St. Petersburg to Tarpon Springs, where you could put a trail on it. So that's kind of what we did. And I think originally thought we were doing a recreation facility, and after we got it built, after a couple of years, we noticed that people were using it for other purposes, maybe shopping, work trips, and so on like that. And we went and did surveys and found that 2/3 of the people on the trail were not for recreation purposes. They were school trips, work trips, social trips, shopping trips, just you name it. And it was just kind of amazing. And I think it has to do with that if you go to other areas and you look at a trail, it goes out from the city out to somewhere else, which therefore limits its opportunities for what you could do with it. You're out to a park or something, where in Pinellas County, the trail goes through the middle of everything.
It's networked together.
Right.
So it's become a major, would you say major transportation element in the Pinellas County plan?
Yes, it's become pretty much major. And then I'll show you on a map here, but what it came down to was we realized that, okay, it wasn't just about the Pinellas Trail. And so what you see on this map, we then thought, well, okay, we're going to go and sit with the various communities in the county and see what trail opportunities they wanted besides just the Pinellas Trail. And you could see all these different orange lines or connecting trails that we then started coming up with on this map. This map shows 20 miles worth of trails, some of which that are built and some in the process. But you can look, this green area is the Pinellas Trail, all the way up to Tarpon Springs up here, St. Petersburg down there, and you're looking at Seminole and Largo and Clearwater, Dunedin, that sort of thing. And one of the things you found was it connected all these communities, just like the railroad did. But then also you can have further connectivity when you've got a trail that goes out to Clearwater Beach, trail that goes out to Dunedin Beach. You can see you've got the east-west trail over here, going through the middle of Clearwater, the east-west. You've got a lot of trails that are being built that connect to it. So it sort of spawned a sort of a whole different approach to transportation for us, kind of broadened it out where we're not just looking at, again, building roads and putting buses in service, but also we had this. But then you could also say, once we kind of put this map together and we had it for a couple of years, then people said, well, we need sort of theme to it or a backbone to it or something like that. That's when we go to the other map. And the other graphic kind of shows you, this is again the Pinellas Trail existing, and then these are the pieces we've been doing. So we said what we'll do is we'll have a Pinellas Trail loop, 75 miles through the whole county. On this side, this magenta color is the Progress Energy Corridor, and we wound up getting a contract with them or an agreement with them for 99 years to put a trail on their corridor. So that's going to take us a number of years to build that. But when we're finished, you would then have a complete loop in the county. You've got part of Keystone Road, trails being put in there. Trail's already part of East Lake Road already. You can see down in St. Petersburg, we built a trail that tore up the old tracks in St. Petersburg that went across US 19 into downtown, and have a trail there now, and then the trail's going up the east side of the county on First Street. So you can see we're just kind of gradually working our way around the county. But the objective is to basically have a way to travel in the county by trail without actually having to be in a car. That's the objective.
And that's what we want to help encourage people to do, isn't it?
Well, yes, and I think the thing that we've also found was that we coincidentally dropped into a national trend which was called livable communities, where basically you try to work with your community and have it livable, meaning you can walk around easy to destinations without necessarily making a 20-mile car trip to a store or to work or something like that. So the idea is, therefore, this trail concept kind of fits right into that and fits into that trend. So it kind of makes it easier for us to move into that new cutting-edge opportunity, so to speak.
Exactly.
And the reason I say that is that as they rework the federal programs and the federal laws and the federal funding programs, there's more money that's focused now into this area of moving around, because as you go forward, it's not just about a good idea for keeping, maybe reducing air quality and saving the gas out of a car, but also now you've got another initiative which is health. and that people should be out moving around more just for good health reasons. So you keep coming up with more and more reasons why you should continue to do what we've been doing.
And there's another byproduct of the Pinellas Trail, and I think that was unforeseen, is a little bit of an economic engine in some downtown areas, for instance, Dunedin, and even in St. Petersburg along the trail. It's kind of been an economic boost.
It has been. For instance, the first one, Dunedin, they became the poster child for how you could work your, take advantage of the trail. And they took advantage of it and had pedestrian connections to it for their stores and this sort of thing. So that became a poster child for how you could have the trail part of your community, very pedestrian friendly. And then I think St. Petersburg now has picked up on that on obviously a larger scale because they're a bigger community. By doing the same thing, the trail goes in and they're now having orientation in terms of activities and events and things like that built around the trail and built around people walking and riding their bike and that sort of thing. So it's really kind of neat to see because it's kind of a more pleasant way to move around. Sometimes people get tired of just being behind the wheel of a car. But when you've walked somewhere or you've ridden your bike somewhere, you feel like the getting there is just as much of an event as where you're going.
And you're also able to see Pinellas County from a different viewpoint, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that it's amazing how much you see. I'm sure people walk through the neighborhood and they'll see things in the neighborhood that they never would see if they were just driving. You know, but it's going to be really cool. We're looking at the 20th anniversary for the Pinellas Trail, and then maybe looking at for the next 10 years, trying to pursue this big project and maybe have it done in the next 10 years. So our 30th anniversary, we'll be looking back and saying, well, look how much more we've done.
Yes. So you would encourage people to come out and use the trail?
Oh yes, definitely.
Well, you use the trail all the time, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Twice a week I come to work on the trail, and pretty much it's about 8.5 miles. Once you're used to it, it's pretty easy to do, even in the summer.
Well, great. Thank you for joining us, Brian.
Thank you. It was good to be here and go over it.
Yes. And if you haven't been out to the Pinellas Trail, please do. And please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello, welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Good to be here.
Great. Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes. These issues will be public hearing items during an upcoming Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting. Are you ready to get started?
Sure am. Ready.
Okay. Our first item is a zoning change from R3 single family residential and R4 1, 2, and 3 family residential to RM 12.5 residential multiple family 12 units per acre and RM 5 residential multiple family 5 units per acre on approximately 0.76 acres located on the west side of Dempsey Road south of Virginia Avenue in Palm Harbor. Now that's a lot of numbers and descriptions. Tell us about this item.
Okay, well, this is in your, this is the Ozona area, so you go to Alton 19 over here and Tampa Road down below here. So this is Dempsey Road. So the proposal then is in this kind of treed area here, and it goes to a multifamily proposal from a single family proposal. And then here's the Pinellas Trail over on this side here, so that gets you oriented. To the south you can see all of the the trees and the houses. This is all a single family here, and to the north it's zoned for multifamily. So the project's between the two areas. So the proposal was to look at that, and when they took it up at the local planning agency this month, the local planning agency suggested maybe some other alternative be looked at for this, maybe a different designation. So the item was continued a month to allow for the sorting out of that, to see if there was some other proposals could also be considered, maybe a little bit less density to match the surrounding area.
Mm-hmm. And on the next map,
oh yeah, we go to the next one. We can.
We see the usage is to the north, it's a little denser, and to the south,
Right.
it's single family.
Yeah. This is all residential, but various densities. So it's all in single family density here, with what they call RM 7.5 at this end, and that's residential multifamily RM, and then the RM to the north here. So the proposal was to make this an RM, and what density to put on it. Do you try to make it the same as to the south or to the north, or split the difference, that sort of thing? And that's what they're going to look out over the next month.
And this parcel is also split because of, and the
Yes.
recommendations or the change was requested for two different zonings.
Yeah, you do have, this is again the Pinellas Trail, and then the parcel goes a little bit over to the west, little triangle there, and whatever happens over there could get their development get transferred over here. I don't think they'd actually do anything over there.
So staff is going to work on this?
Yes, and they'll rethink it and then come back next month with another maybe suggestion, or stick with the same one. We'll see how that goes.
Okay, so it'll be coming before us again.
Yes.
All right. Our next item is a request for a zoning change from R3 single family residential to M1 light manufacturing and industry on approximately 0.27 acres located on the east side of Faxton Street, south of Omelton Road in unincorporated Clearwater. Let's go, tell us about this one.
Yes, okay, the map kind of shows you here, we're looking at south of Omelton Road here, and this is US 19, so you're back in the industrial area. And this little parcel here is a house is on it with typical single-family zoning R3, and it's proposed to go again to the manufacturing category, or the industrial category they call it. And so you can see probably in the next aerial, next graphic, you can see all this gray area is shown on the plan as industrial. So pretty much that's what's foreseen for the future. So the idea was take this residential and kind of match it up to the future. Whenever you do this, there's always, you want to be careful that any existing residence doesn't, someone isn't forced out of their house, that sort of thing. So they sorted through that, but it looks like now it's pretty straightforward to make the zoning, which is R3, residential zoning, match up with what the plan shows for the whole area, which
That's
is manufacturing.
pretty straightforward then.
It should be, yeah.
All right. All right. Now we're going to switch gears and discuss a proposed amendment to the Pinellas County Land Development Code. This item is a proposed ordinance amending the sign code provisions of Chapter 138 of the Pinellas County Land Development Code. So what's this one about?
This is really about billboards, and they call off-premise signs, but it's really about billboards. And the issue had come up when you have what they call animated boards or other ways where it almost looks like a TV screen.
Right.
Those are the new technology, and whether you permit those and how frequently that changes. Right now, the argument can be made that it's only every minute, it's every 60 seconds. But the idea is, would you want to have it more frequent than that? And then also, how would you affect the existing billboards? There's two major companies now that do billboards in the area. And these kind of proposals are primarily only focused on the US 19, the Omelton Road, the special federal aid category, they call it, of road. So they're not throughout the whole county. But the idea was how to approach that, what kind of regulations do you have? And so since it is directly affecting that industry that runs the billboards or operates them, the industry had said they wanted to have some more time to look at what the proposals were, so they requested about a 3 or 4 month continuance of what we're looking at. But it's going to be kind of interesting. It's kind of an emerging technology, and you know, in some areas things stay always the way they are. If someone built a house, it stays the same. But when you get into something like a billboard, technology's changed, and right now there probably wouldn't be that many of these things, because I think it's like over $1 million one of these boards costs. So there are not going to be that many of them. And so the idea was how far apart they would be along the road, and how big they should be, and how frequently the message should change. Those are the kind of things that are going to be in the ordinance that we'd be looking at. But again, it looks like it's several months down the road now before we'll actually seriously look at it again.
And the considerations that staff is reviewing with the businesses are the safety considerations for motorists.
Right. Well, it's pretty
And-
complicated because you can imagine that the major safety one was the distraction. So when someone's driving down the road, if it's changing very frequently, then you're going to find someone looking back off the road to look and see what's changing. So you've got some safety issues like that, or you want to have two too close together. One's changing, the other's changing again. So you don't want to have those kind of distractions. So there's a major federal study going on right now to conclude how much of a safety issue is it. And so we've also been waiting on the results of that study, that maybe that can be available for us at the time we take our action up. But we're not sure yet because that study's been delayed several times.
Oh, okay. So we'll see this one again.
Yes, we will.
All right. Moving right along. Our next item for discussion is a proposed resolution amending the Trinity Communities Development of Regional Impact Development Order. Now, we've talked about the Trinity DRI, I think is what it's called.
Right.
Can you explain that acronym and what this is about?
It's something that was developed in the 1970s, this concept of a development of regional impact, they call it. And the project, it varies depending upon which county you're in and the density of that county. But basically, for our area, it's like anything over 3,000 units or housing units. That's what a development of regional impact is. In some smaller counties, it's 1,000 units as an example, or then it could be a certain size shopping center, that sort of thing. So that's the background behind it. And the idea was that the developer does a development of regional impact study. They do a big, thick study looking at all the transportation impacts, the water impacts, the sewer impacts, environmental impacts. And then based on that, a set of recommendations are put together that go into a development order that then the local government approves. And in this case, this big project straddled two counties, so it was in the very north end of Pinellas County and then also in Pasco County. Because there's a piece in Pinellas County, everything they do with that development of regional impact in Pasco County, we have to concur with it in the development. We both have to pass development orders.
I think we have a map of that area
Well, it
as
might
well.
be easier, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the map here.
Uh-huh.
So here's the county line, Pinellas County's line, and here's the Hillsborough County line for us. So this is East Lake Road, and this is Trinity going up this way up to eventually, I think it's 54th, State Road 54 coming through here. So this is the Trinity. You can see then project, you can see, so it's along State Road 54 in the north and then the county line on the south. So it's a really big area. And the same is another parcel that's over here to the west. And then here's East Lake Road again. And west of there is this other little parcel, which I think they've mostly transferred the development rights over into the county. So we haven't seen a lot of activity here, but what they're now doing was the fact that they're actually saying there's going to be less impacts from this project to reduce down the amount of development that's occurring. So as a result, they'd pay less transportation impact fee. And since this development order covers everything but soup to nuts in it, they have to then modify the development order and modify the amount set aside for the transportation impact fee. And so it's kind of a straightforward item. So because they're taking that action up here, we have to do the same thing down here in Pinellas County.
Just to reflect and stay on the same page.
Right. Yeah, because they were reducing the trips something like 83,000 trips a day generated down to 72,000 trips a day, which therefore reduced the impact of the project, so therefore less money they have to come up with.
Okay. All right. I think there's some upcoming meetings that we want to tell everyone about. They're quality community public meetings.
Yes, what we're looking at is a major update to our what we call our land development code, which includes the zoning and regulations like that on people's land. And we haven't done this in probably 20 to 30 years, looking at a major code update. I think the last time we really looked at it was 1990. So that's over 20 years now, or almost 20 years. So the idea is, if you do that, you want to do it with the public having full knowledge of what you're doing. And we're open on, the idea is to do some things like maybe have where development would be more energy efficient, as an example. That would be one thing, permitting development to do that. Also another one was have livable community provisions where it'd be easier for pedestrians to move around. And then just look at a lot of updating of code, things that just haven't changed in many years. So all of that, as we now at the beginning stages of it, it's going to take us roughly a year and a half to do all this. Very in the front end, we want to do is go out to the public, have some workshops, explain to people what we're proposing to look at doing, and listening to any ideas they had about other things we should change in the code to make it more friendly to communities, not only to developers but also to citizens, so they know what's going on. So I think it's more of an outreach program. We're looking at the later part of January to have these 3 hearings in different parts of the county, and again to sort of listen, give them an idea of what's going on and what's proposed, if you want to call it proposed, and then feedback from them in terms of ideas we should look at or ideas they have about what we're suggesting we're going to do.
Okay, all right. And those locations and dates are Wednesday, January 26th at Dixie Hollins High School. That's located at 4940 62nd Street North. And Thursday, January 27th at East Lake High School, 1300 Silver Eagle Drive in the East Lake area. And Tuesday, February 1st at Seminole Middle School, which is located at 8701 131st Street North in Seminole. Again, all meetings will be held between 6 and 8 p.m. with presentations beginning at 6:30 p.m. Well, thanks for joining us, Brian.
Good to be here again.
Always great to see you.
Thank you.
And as we mentioned earlier, the public hearing items we discussed are scheduled to be heard during the public hearing portion of the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting beginning at 6:30 p.m. on January 25th. Please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello and welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Good to be here.
Good to have you with us. Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes. These issues will be public hearing items during an upcoming Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting. Well, we've got a few items on the agenda. You ready to get started?
All set.
Okay. Our first item is a zoning change from R3 single family residential and R4 1, 2, and 3 family residential to RM 12.5 residential multiple family, 12.5 units per acre, and RM 5 residential multiple family, 5 units per acre on approximately 0.76 acres located on the west side of Dempsey Road, south of Virginia Avenue in Palm Harbor. Now, we've talked about this item before, haven't we?
Yes, we have, and this has kind of been in the system a little bit, but it's basically, first of all, I want to point out, this is Palm Harbor, but then you have a more narrower area called Ozona, that's right in the western part of the county, just north of Dunedin. And so the case is in there. Now, if we drill in a little bit, I'll be able to show you something here. So this is let's see, where is it? We're looking at the Pinellas Trail here, and this is alternate 19, and then you've got Tampa Road kind of coming in from the south, like this. And so basically, this property was proposed to go into a higher density, say 12 units an acre. But it's in the Ozona area, and so what happened was there was some concern expressed about whether that density was too high. So when they were deliberating on the case, it was agreed that the density should be reduced. So now the proposal is actually for what they call RM 7.5, 7 units an acre basically. And so it was modified down from 12 to 7, and the other is that this is in the zoning area, so the other is that was concerned about being compatible with the surrounding area. So one of the things they're going to try and do with the project, and was included in the recommended action, was actually have the project maintain its tree canopy and that sort of thing, and also be designed the way that's compatible with the surrounding area. That's the ozone overlay, where the ozone overlay defines sort of an established amount of development and how it looks and how it feels, and somehow they want to translate that with this project, and the people working with the project were receptive to that.
Okay. So when it goes before the board, it will be amended to the 7.5
Correct.
recommendation.
It's already been amended now. They sort of modified as went through the process, and the developer agreed to do that at the local planning agency meeting. So that means it's going to go forward now as the 7.5, but also with the understanding that it would be developed in a way that would be compatible with the area around it.
So the next map shows us the compatible properties and
Right.
their zoning.
This just shows the plan designations. This is all your sort of multifamily type development. They call it this orange color. And then this is Dempsey Road here. So you have the post office off in front. So what happens is this area here is all developed with what they call R3 zoning and single family development. The area to the north has a multifamily or apartment type zoning. So this was between the two. That's what has put the difference with the 70 an acre and what they call RM, the residential multifamily designation. So it's going from the single family R3 to the multifamily, and it's sort of halfway between the density of the projects on either side.
And this property was split into 2 parcels. Yeah, can you tell us what the recommendation on the other?
Oh yeah, so I shouldn't, there's also a little piece, this is the Pinellas Trail, then it actually, another part of it is over on the west side of the trail, a little corner there, and that's going to be like 5 units an acre, RM5. And I imagine the development rights will be just moved over to this side.
Oh,
there won't
okay.
be anything happening over there.
So it's just allowing for a gradual transition to the single family.
Correct, right. With the understanding that, you have established communities, say like Ozona and many other communities in the county, where you want to allow for development, but you want to make sure the development that goes in matches what's already there. And that's the thing you're always trying to work with. And so, and that's what they're hopefully trying to do here, because some people were expressing some concern that we're in a single family kind of rural kind of feel atmosphere here, to make sure that this project matched what they were doing, what they already had there.
And keeping the character of the community.
Right, and sometimes it isn't all about buildings, it might be landscaping, how it's laid out, maybe this sort of thing. A lot of choices you can make about how you develop a property as to how it looks.
Okay, all right. Our next item is a request for a zoning change from R3 Single Family Residential to P1A Limited Office and Professional on a vacant parcel containing approximately 0.39 acres located on the north side of Curlew Road, west of Fisher Road in Palm Harbor. The applicant is also requesting a land use change from residential urban to residential office limited. Tell us about this one.
We're seeing a lot more of this, where you basically will find areas that would have normally been residential in the past that are now challenged to have proposals of office development through them. And you're up in, therefore, again, the Palm Harbor area along Curlew Road here, just west of US 19. And I think the next slide will give you an idea of a little better. So you've got Belcher Road on this side, US 19 on this side, and then this is Curlew Road. This has been recently widened with improvements to it. And it did kind of look kind of messy when it was being constructed, but now that it's complete, it's a pretty attractive area. And basically what they're talking about here is, in through here you've got a lot of residential established on both sides, plus you've also got some office mixed in. But the idea is they want to go to office here, and then how do you do the office where it's compatible with the residential around it? So this actually has gone to the County Commission one time already, and the County Commission actually denied it, saying they were concerned about the impact on the residential that's adjacent to it. So I think what it is you have some of these areas to where you try to, this is a better shot here, you can see that all this yellow is residential on the land use plan. So you can see, even though you've got some other uses that have been put in there with special exception or something like that, like a daycare center, that sort of thing, or a church, you can see primarily the plan is designated as residential. So what you want to do is, if you do introduce some office in there, you want to make sure the office is very compatible with the residential. You don't compromise the people that are in there that are trying to live and make improvements to their house and have a kind of a residential ambiance to it. So this is coming forward again for consideration. It was continued at the LPA meeting to 2 months from now to kind of have a full board. They only had a partial members. They had a limited number of people who are at the meeting this time, and so they're going to have a full board in 2 months. So I think it'll still kind of then have to have sorted out how you do this relationship where you permit office and maybe not compromise the residential.
Okay.
And it may or may not be able to be done.
Right, right. And because it's in the middle of the block, I mean, it not on maybe a corner that has an influence on it.
That would be too, because you could see you've got a little bit of, you've got some office on the end here, and you've obviously got some office over here. If you drop right in the middle and start introducing the office, maybe some people could argue that wasn't the best place to start. Maybe you ought to work from one end to the other. But it's a kind of complicated thing to look at, but it's the kind of thing we'll start seeing a lot more of, these kind of questions.
And I guess we'll see this item again
Yes,
moving
we will.
forward. All right. Our next item is a request for a zoning change from C1 neighborhood commercial to C2 general retail commercial and limited services on a parcel containing approximately 0.30 acres located on the north side of 54th Avenue North between 59th Way North and 60th Street North, located in unincorporated Kenneth City.
Yes, you've got an area down here, sometimes it's referred to as Layleman, and that's another way to refer to it, and it's along 54th Avenue. I think the next slide will give you a better idea where it is. You can see it's all pretty well established, and that's part of the county, and this is 54th Avenue. And then you can see you've got a lot of tree cover mixed into the buildings. And this is kind of a somewhat busy road along here, and then this is where your parcel is here, just on the north side of 54th Avenue. And this kind of gives you a little better feel. This is all red or commercial development all along the north side of the road. And so that's already on the plan as commercial. And even the zoning itself for this parcel is like C1, kind of neighborhood level commercial, and they want to go to C2, which is general commercial. And I don't necessarily think that anybody sees any problem with that because it's already established as commercial along there. Some have C1, some have C2. See, it's a little bit different on the south side, but so I think this was kind of viewed as a straightforward thing. No one seemed to have too much of a problem with it, but we'll kind of see if we get to the public hearing.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to switch gears and discuss a proposed ordinance amending the Pinellas County Land Development Code. This item is a proposed ordinance amending Chapter 150 of the Pinellas County Land Development Code regarding impact fees. Tell us about this.
Well, the idea, first of all, behind a transportation impact fee is that the development pays for some of the impacts that are generated by the development that they're putting in, either by putting new development in or by redeveloping something and maybe increasing the use. So what you do is you have an ordinance in place, and most local governments have it, where it calculates what the impact of transportation, what the project is, and impact on the transportation around it. And what you do is you have a big thick manual I have in the federal government that basically defines all these different uses and then how much trips each one generates, how long the trip is, and that sort of thing.
So like a restaurant.
So a restaurant would have so many trips a day, and the trip be such and such a length, so like this. And from all this you can then calculate basically what the impact would be on the road relative between different for commercial than from residential and so on like that. And so we've got a formula that they use, and so that's all put into an ordinance. And then it results in a fee that then the developer pays based upon how much square footage they have times the, the fee. You can then figure out the actual total fee. The same is true with residential, and every a unit will pay so much money. So basically what you have to do is update this every couple of years, because maybe the cost of building the road that's needed may change, or actually how people drive may change in terms of trip length again, or frequency of trips. So through all this process, then you basically have to make sure every 2 years you review the ordinance, make sure all the numbers are correct. So we just recently reviewed that transportation impact fee ordinance this last few months, and then have a recommendation now to basically change 7 categories out of 7, actually out of a couple hundred. And they're almost all the categories are going to change and go down. And so there's a little less impact for about 6 of them. And then the 7th one was a slight increase, and it was for private library, which We almost have about, I think, one in Pinellas County, which is down near Stetson.
So those impact fees go to upgrading roads or
Yes.
repairing roads, those kind of things.
So what happens is when someone comes in with a development project, they've got a site plan, then based upon the site plan, they'll calculate how much development's going to occur and what the fee is. So then the developer actually pays then a fee to the county or to a city for basically covering the impacts of what they're going to do.
All right. Brian, always a pleasure to have you.
Good to be here again.
Okay, great. And as we mentioned earlier, the public hearing items we discussed are scheduled to be heard during the public hearing portion of the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting beginning at 6:30 p.m. on February 22nd. Please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello and welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
It's good to be here.
Great. Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes that are regularly heard by the Board of County Commissioners. In this edition of Planning Near You, we're going back to school, so to speak, to give you a primer about zoning designations and explain how these relate to plan categories and the planning process. All right, Brian. Tell us about this.
Yeah, well, first of all, we have zoning was first established in like 1926 with a famous zoning case. And the idea of zoning is to then not to deal too much with the property itself, but how you have the activity on that property not affect your neighbors. That's the original basis of zoning. And so, therefore, you kind of have an external influence in terms of decision making. The reason I mention that is, therefore, the use that's permitted in that property, then how it would affect other people. That's usually the background for how we're controlling things. Then it got into, okay, not only then adjacent uses that had to do with impacts on water and sewer and transportation. So that's all the context. But therefore, we've got almost a couple of dozen zoning categories that people fit in. And so we kind of thought we'd walk through the designations of those and what they mean, so if people saw R1, 2, or 3 or something, they'd know what that meant.
Okay.
You know,
so you want to start with R1?
Yes. No, actually, I'm going to start off with the agricultural first.
Oh, okay.
And so there's about 3 categories that are used that are the very low-intensive ones. And originally, the county had much of its land. One of the major industries in the county used to be agriculture with dairy and citrus. And so it was a very prevalent category. Agricultural category was the category. And then we still have that category in the zoning code now, and that's the AE one, they call it, and agricultural estate. And basically that's the one where we still have a 2-acre requirement. And basically you can do things there, but the difference now is the fact that you can do agricultural things, but they have to, you can only do it for yourself. If you want to do it as a business or for other business reasons, then you have to have a county commission approval. But you can do it in that category. It's the only one where you can actually run the agricultural business is in the AE. Then you've got the other 2 categories, which are what they call the E1, and that's estate residential, and that's where you have basically estate type of zoning, and people can actually have large lots in there.
Okay.
And then you've got what they call rural, RR, and that's also very low intensive. And see, though one is a state kind of, and the other is residential, rural, but it's kind of, you for instance can do agricultural things, but they can only be things for yourself.
Okay. And I know we've seen items come up about changing those categories so that they can use the land in a different way, right?
Right. And but you sometimes find some of the things that people like to do, like gardening or just having horses or things like that, it's all permitted in those kind of zones, or it isn't in the others. So, and we still have quite a bit of land that's, even in our county, that's built out as it is. We have quite a bit of land that's still AE and this E1 and RR categories.
All right. And what's the next category?
Next category ramps it up in the, like you started to say, the R1, 2, and 3 zoning. Basically, these are all categories focused on single-family development, the typical kind of development you see throughout the county. And so R1 is the more pristine one, if you want to call it. That's like larger lot. It's about a little over 9,500 square foot lot. And then it goes down. R2 is a 7,500 foot lot, and then R3 is a 6,000 foot lot. All the uses are very similar. They're all single family and what you typically find in a residential area. And then it ends with R4. And R4 is different from the others. You can then drop in a 2-family or a 3-family structure, a duplex or a triplex. So it starts ramping up a little bit, but you can still put single family in it. So one of the things we found throughout the county is the fact that you'll actually see the R4 a lot in areas where actually it's all single family. So it's just the way things have developed, they never put the duplex or the triplex in there. Because what happens is, in many cases, the zoning has to match the plan. So even though you might be permitted to do a higher density in the R4, if it's 5 units an acre on the plan, the category, then you find that you really can't do much more than the single family. So you kind of have to look at the zoning and the plan together. But it is interesting that there's a lot of, those are pretty much the workhorse zones, the R1, 2, and 3 for the single family, and then the R4 in some places within a duplex and a triplex mixed in.
And when you look at planning maps, you'll see patterns emerging where there are different zones next to each other, and they kind of fall off and come back to R1 and up to R4.
Yeah, you try to
patterns.
What I mentioned before about how the zoning tries to protect adjacent areas. So, for instance, if you've got a lot of R1 as an example, and then someone wants to put in an R3 or something, you have to really think carefully about that because you want to match up with the other area around it, what's permitted. So that's where how zoning makes it work. You want to try and match those categories up as much as possible.
And so the next type of category is?
That's when you get into your higher density ones. Now, R6 is always been for mobile homes. And you have a rental mobile home park or a subdivision, they call it, of mobile homes. But it's all about mobile homes. But you can also have, over the years, they've had what they call a manufactured housing or where something is built off-site and brought on. And it used to be mobile homes. Now, of course, it's other what they call manufactured housing. And that's also pretty much permitted in R6. In fact, sometimes you can now do manufactured housing even in the other zones. But R6 is predominantly mobile homes. And you're looking at over 50,000 mobile homes in the county. So you're looking at, that's a pretty extensive zone. And then you've got the other two, you've got what they call RM, and that's the multifamily, residential multifamily. And that's, that permits apartment, townhouse, or again, single family. And then they'll say, if they give them RM, it'll have a 5 beside it, or a 7.5, or a 10, which means that's a density. And what you do is you say, okay, you're going to be a multifamily zone, but we might limit the density to what matches the area again, or matches the facilities to support it. And it could be RM 12.5, or it could be 5, or a 7.5 number like that. And it's very similar to what we call the RPD zone. And I feel like I'm really going to the alphabet soup here, but this is the category.
But that's what
this is what it is.
Right.
So if you saw RPD, it's planned development, which
Okay.
meant in that case there's required open space, and it's usually a bigger community like you have in East Lake Tarpon area where you've laid out hundreds of acres of property, and you did an RPD because you've got a golf course here, and you've got a town, what do you call it, a little clubhouse, and then you've got some open space and that sort of thing, and that's all on what they call an RPD. And an RPD again gets into you can do RPD 1 or 2.5. The density is tied to it again. And so the RPD gives the whole flexibility of layout, and then you put the density beside it. And up in East Lake Tarpon, you've got 1 unit an acre, and you've got 2.5 units an acre, and sometimes 5. So it varies quite a bit depending on the area of the county you're in.
Mm-hmm. And when you're building a development like that, those densities are also looked at and made sure that the area
Right.
can handle the traffic and
Oh,
all
yeah.
of. There's a lot of impacts that are looked at.
There really are, and but the RPD gives you a lot of flexibility to work with. But again, it's kind of like you don't normally find that in the smaller areas because, not say smaller areas, I mean established areas, because the zone needs to be bigger to work.
Right.
Because you're moving things around.
Right. Okay. And what's our next class?
Well, the next one you move into all the commercial, which is showing up on the screen there, where you're looking at there's 2 office categories.
Mm-hmm.
There's an office and an office limited. And the only real difference between them is basically more of how much is permitted in terms of size of building. So like the floor area limitation is what they call 0.2. That's in the office limited, and then it doubles to 0.4 in the office. And the ratio is, they call it floor area ratio, like the 0.2 would mean the amount of building divided by the area of the whole lot. Mm-hmm. So if you had 0.2, it means then you've got almost only 20% of the property. If you got an acre of land, then it means in terms of acres, then you've got 0.2 acres worth of floor area in the building. Mm-hmm. And you could build it higher and smaller, or lower and flatter, kind of thing like that. So, and it's primarily focused on office. Then when you get into the commercial categories, like the C1 and C2, then you've got C1 is like a very neighborhood kind of commercial, and those are usually smaller and supporting like a little store and limited kind of commercial, sometimes office in that as well. But when you go to C2, that's when you start getting the shopping centers and the bigger kind of commercial. And so those are the 2 kind of commercial categories. And then you start getting into, I think we're also probably going to the next slide, which is when you ramp it up to the other kind of uses. But the C1 and C2 are the workhorse ones for all the commercial people who see along the roads. Mm-hmm. Then
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you go into the probably the next slide that you're going to see. This is when you get into other ones, which are like C3 is a warehouse zone. Mm-hmm. And even though it looks like it's commercial because it's got a C in front, it is commercial, but you're going to find it a lot in industrial areas, because warehousing and wholesaling and that sort of thing requires a lot of trucking and a lot of external activity, which is kind of disruptive. You would want to have that sometimes even near commercial, let alone near residential, that sort of thing like that. Mm-hmm. Then you get into the other categories, like we list them up there. You've got a commercial recreation, and that's for like you might have everything from I'm going to say like a travel trailer park to a recreation facility where you might.
Well, how about I've seen a business along Park Boulevard on Lake Seminole. Is that like a kayak type business?
It would
or
be,
a
but
rental?
if it was commercial, if you were like renting out kayaks and that sort of thing for an area, and you might be by the park, so the park wouldn't be commercial recreation, but the business beside it would be, as an example like that. You kind of get into that, and you got other categories like that commercial parkway, and the commercial parkway zone is, you see that a lot on like US 19. And it's the CP zone, they call it. And it was customized, was originally invented for US 19 so you could limit the development. It's more restrictive as a category than the general commercial is. So basically you've got a tighter floor area requirement. And you actually even permit some residential and some industrial in it. And it's focused along a big corridor like US 19, where basically you're permitting commercial and you're limiting how much of it is, but usually bigger chunks of land and shopping centers and things like that. And it seems to work pretty well. We added in permitting industrial in that because it's an area where you can actually do that. And we found that a number of years ago that there were places where commercial wasn't viable and there'd been a shopping center and then it didn't work anymore. So now you can actually convert that to a sort of clean industry, and you can actually have that in the same building without having to change the zoning.
Okay.
And then you get into the other 2 categories, the manufacturing, the M1 and M2, and when you got the middle of the county is all a big manufacturing area, and what we call the light manufacturing, the M1, is kind of more what's acceptable to the community than the M2 is when you get the big cement plants and that sort of thing. So that's called a heavy industry. That's one that's, you kind of want to be really careful where you locate that.
So have we exhausted our zoning types?
Almost types. You got a few
Okay.
more.
All
The more
right.
lightweight ones here.
Yes.
And one is AL, or aquatic lands.
Okay.
And this is one where we've got, you actually have to zone every piece of property in the county. That's the way it is. So
Even if it's underwater?
even if it's public and even if it's underwater.
Okay.
Because someone might still have development rights to it.
Right.
So if you put the aquatic lands on it, it meant it's going to stay aquatic land. And you're not even necessarily transferring development rights off it. It just stays aquatic land. And considering that we deal in the world of private enterprise, if somebody owns something, that sometimes thinks they can do something with it. So if you, for instance, put aquatic lands on it, means it just stay aquatic land, that sort of thing. The same thing with preservation. Although preservation would require a little bit of credit, you can transfer some density off that to somewhere else and develop it. But we do have a zoning for preservation and conservation, and we've got also two other categories, the public, semi-public, and the institutional. Public, semi-public is the obvious one where we're dealing with public lands, and then the institutional one is where you're dealing with churches and things like that, where they're not commercial or anything, but you still want to have a zoning category for them and kind of say what, and other people would know what's going to go on in there. So if we permit a church, we say it's institutional, then if they change from a church to something else, you've got to change the zoning.
Is a hospital under that?
That'd be under
designation?
institutional, but it could also sometimes be under public, but usually it's under institutional.
Okay.
But it's kind of interesting to kind of walk through all these letters, because I realize that I'm throwing a lot of letters around, but
Exactly.
when you look at a map, that's what you need to know. You need to know, is it R1 or is it C1, and then
Right.
all of a sudden kicks in everything else you need to know once you know that number.
And then you can look at the map and adjacent uses and make determinations
Right,
from there.
right. But the whole world of it is all built around the zoning and the planning. That's how all this stuff is controlled, because if you know what the zoning is, then you're going to know what the uses are, what the setbacks are, how high the building's going to be. Any special things can be permitted with additional, like say, special exceptions. All of that, you can kind of figure all that out once you've got that one terminology down.
It's fascinating.
Yeah?
Well, thank you, Professor Smith. And interesting topic, as always.
Yes.
All right. And please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello and welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us again, Brian.
Good to be here again.
Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes. These issues will be public hearing items during an upcoming Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting. You ready to get started? It's a big list we have
Sure
today.
is. Yep.
Our first item is a request for a zoning change from R3 Single Family Residential to P1A Limited Office and Professional, and a request for a land use change from Residential Urban to Residential Office Limited on a vacant parcel containing approximately 0.39 acres located on the north side of Curlew Road, west of Fisher Road in Palm Harbor.
Yes, this is going to be one of our more interesting cases. This is in the North County area. This is Curlew Road, and you can see Belcher Road, and then US 19. I think the next slide kind of gets a little further into it. Now this is an aerial, this being Curlew Road, and then 19 is over here on the east side, and then this is Belcher Road. And you can see all through here, you've got pretty much an established, developed area with a lot of residential primarily, with some mixture of office and that sort of thing in it. The next slide kind of shows what you're really talking about is, so therefore, all this yellow is residential. Even though there's been some other alternate uses put in, such as a daycare and that sort of thing, and some church activities. But you can see, because then it's all residential along here on the plan, the proposal is to put office in. And so we recognize that along this road, you might not normally have the normal kind of residential environment along here, but it's still pretty nicely maintained. And the people have made improvements on the residential as well as the office type of uses. So what the proposal is to do is to change this to office right here, a very limited office they call it. And so that's what's going to be going before the board is, how do you sort out, if you say eventually we might want to have office along here, but how do you do it where it doesn't create a problem for the adjacent residential? And that's kind of what we'll be dealing with on a few corridors, but this is probably the best example of it. Because again, it's viable for residential, that's why they're wanting to stay there. But you also have some office opportunities, and so how do you work that out?
And isn't the property on the corner to the east a church property?
Yes, right. So some of this showed up as residential, I mean, but you've got some other uses in there, which are permitted in your residential, which are churches and that sort of thing, which kind of compromises your thought process a little bit, not it sort of complicates it a little bit like that. But again, so we'll sort it out, but I think it is, how do you introduce office through here with, again, without compromising the people that are living there, and making sure we have also a good environment for them to maintain what they want to do till they decide differently.
And this is what the hearing process is about, isn't it?
Yes, right. You have public hearings, and you hear from the public, and then the board decides what to do based upon all that input.
All right. Our next item is a request for a modification to a previously approved conditional use permit, which allowed a vegetative solid waste transfer facility in a C3 zoning district on 3 parcels of land containing approximately 5.09 acres, located on the west side of U.S. Highway 19 at the western terminus of Whitney Road. Now, we've seen this one before, haven't we?
We have, and there was some action taken by the board on it. This is US 19, and just off US 19 is the site we're talking about. The next slide might show you a little more about what's going on. This being US 19, and this is the site here you can see. And then there's a lot of residential all around it, big mobile home park. And so what we're looking at is they want to have a transfer site, take debris in here, store it, and accumulate it, and then take it down to the county's major recycling plant. So the idea is, what kind of limitations do you put on? Now you can see here, all this red is commercial, and then surrounding it is the residential. You can see where the problem is. So if you got it, normally this isn't a problem. If you've got typical commercial, you can buffer it and put some landscaping up. But in this case, you're looking at trucks involved in dumping and picking things up in a transfer type of city where they're taking, say, landscape debris and this sort of thing, and they're piling it here and then storing it up, and then again shipping it down with the trucks to the recycling plant. So in that case, what you want to do is try to figure out what limitations you can put on the activity there. So basically you minimize the noise and whatever else impacts you could have to the area surrounding it, the residential. And this kind of comes down to, when you're trying to come up with transfer facilities for something like this, you want to try to locate it near a road, but also take into account most parts of Pinellas County, you can have a conflict somewhere with someone because it's just not a lot of not a lot of room, to really do what you want necessarily. So this is going to be one of those challenges. So that's going to go before the board, and there's some proposals for how to limit it. We'll just see if that's going to really work.
And I thought about this item. It was interesting that the planning process even goes to the detail of how individual areas of property are and how they're used.
Well, the reason for that is that this use would not normally be permitted except on a conditional basis. So they call it a conditional use. So normally this isn't something you just walk in and say, I want to do this, and you get approval to do it. In this case, you actually have to go through a public hearing process to get the use okayed. And then what you do is you tack on certain limitations as to the size, what you want to do, and setbacks for it and things like that. You can put those limitations in, so it's called a conditional use, and that's the process we're doing now.
All right. Our next item is a request for a zoning change from C2, General Retail Commercial and Limited Services, to C3, Commercial Wholesale Warehousing and Industrial Support, on approximately 0.49 acres, located on the south side of 126th Avenue North and west of Belcher Road, located in the unincorporated area of Largo.
Well, you can see this is south of Ulmerton Road in the greater Largo area. It's unincorporated. I think the next slide might show a little more. You can see here, you're looking at, I think this is Belcher Road here, and you can see basically what we're looking at is this is a kind of a very well built up area. So what you do in here, you want to be careful that you do it correctly. I think the next slide you kind of get a little better feel for things. Anyway, so here's 126 going through here in this Belcher. You can see all this gray is industrial designation, and then the residential is way over here. So it means mostly what you do here is going to really only have an impact on the surrounding industrial area. So when they want to go and do some, I think some rework and some rebuilding on mobile home type facilities and that sort of thing, that kind of work can be done here without disrupting the surrounding area, which is also industrial. So this will be considered kind of a straightforward case, I believe.
Okay. All right. Our next item is a request for a conditional use for an outdoor solid waste transfer station, vegetative and demolition debris, as a conditional use in a M1 light manufacturing and industry district on approximately 1 acre located east of the Pinellas Trail and south of Tampa Road.
Yes, you can see up in the North County area here, it's up in the Ozona area of Pinellas County, and just west of Alton at 19. And you can actually see it a little better here on all this aerial. This is the Pinellas Trail coming through, Orange Street over in Ozona up here, with like Tampa Road up here, and then of course Alton 19. So this is the site. It's kind of pretty much in an industrial area already. You can see by the way it's all developed. I think the next slide shows you a little better. All this gray, like we had the other slide, is all the industrial area, and then the residential is further to the west. You even have a non-conforming industrial activity right here, even adjacent on the trail. So basically what we're looking at is to allow them to do some brief storing and then shipping out of some debris there. So it's not too controversial a proposal, and it does fit within the industrial, especially when you've got industrial around it that's not going to be disrupted.
Right, right.
So that should be pretty straightforward.
Okay. Our next item is a multiple request. The first is a request for an amendment to the future land use map and a change in zoning on approximately 19.74 acres located on the south side of Park Boulevard, west of 79th Street North in the unincorporated Pinellas Park area, subject to a development agreement and associated amendments to the future land use map category descriptions and rules and the legend of the future land use map. Also a request for a land use change from residential urban and preservation with PC, preservation conservation, to residential office retail and preservation with PC, preservation conservation, and a zoning change from R6 mobile home parks and subdivisions to C2 general retail commercial and limited services, and to include a development agreement and associated amendments to the future land use map category descriptions and rules and the legend of the future land use map. I made it through.
That's very good.
That was long, and you're here to tell us all about what that means.
To make it all simple.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, this is the central part of the county, Park Boulevard, and then the project is just to the south of there. This is an aerial, and you can see this used to be a mobile home park, and in fact when they talked about the census reducing population of the county, we had so many of these parks that were basically leveled and with the idea of putting condos in, and they wound up as vacant sites with nothing on them. So you've got a lot less people in the county because of these kind of situations, just as some background. But anyway, here's Park Boulevard. So we're looking at roughly 20 acres worth of land here that basically was a mobile home park and was zoned for one. And then now we're saying is, well, let's make that commercial instead. Now we earlier had a whole proposal package a few years ago to turn this into another kind of project, a big multi-use project that then didn't happen. So now this proposal is to put commercial on here. But because it's on Park Boulevard with some traffic impacts, it's beside Joe's Creek with a lot of environmental drainage issues connected with it. That's when you get the long title of all the things we have to do with developers regulation and all this kind of thing. So basically what we're trying to do is permit this commercial development. I say commercial, the residential office retail permits retail uses and all those kind of things. And so basically, you know, this one here, even though it's yellow on the plan for residential and it's got an R6 on it, which means it's mobile home park, we're going from the yellow to the commercial like the rest is here, except it'll have a residential office retail designation on it, so it'll be a slightly different color, but it's basically be a commercial category. And then what you'd then do is permit some kind of big retail building is what they're looking at there. They call it a big box. That's the expectation. So therefore, by doing that, you have to say, well, it's 20 acres in our county. That's kind of a lot of land, and you want to make sure that your impacts are minimized. So that list of things you read is dealing with impact and requiring things to be changed along Park Boulevard to make it workable there, minimizing the impacts of the residential to the east side, and then also the whole drainage running off, making sure you limit the amount of drainage coming off and you kind of sort of control the pollution from it. So it's got a lot going with it right now, and it's going forward to the board with then the county commission. County commission only wanted to look at this if it had what they call a development agreement with it, where the development agreement could get into all these other things to make the project work. So it's should be a big discussion.
And an interesting one.
And an interesting one.
Yes. All right. Now we're going to switch gears and discuss several proposed ordinances amending the Pinellas County Land Development Code. The first item is a proposed ordinance amending the sign code provisions of Chapter 138. All right, Brian.
Yes, this is one dealing with billboards. And the proposal is that we have a new kind of billboard which is kind of lit up. They call it's lit up with illuminates itself with lights, LED lights. So basically, then how do you regulate that? So this whole ordinance is to respond to that, or ordinance amendment is to respond to that. Where do you put them? How do you put them? What limitations do you have on them in terms of height and size? How bright they should be? So it's a whole package of changes. And so we've been working with this now for almost a year. And it seems like a year anyway, but now we'll actually be going to the board now in April with some proposals. We're working with not only the community, but also with the billboard companies to try and find out something that they would find to be workable, because this is a whole new area, and therefore when you regulate it, you want to make sure you're realistic with what you're doing. And so the billboard industry people have been working with us on that to kind of keep us straight on things, but we're also trying to be looking for make sure they aren't unsafe, because if you don't do it right, you could be very distracting to drivers along the road, or you could also disrupt residential that's nearby because the light's flickering, going on and off and bothering them. So it's kind of a complicated package, but I think we've got a proposal pretty well thought out that the board can look at.
And it's an interesting one because it involves emerging technology.
Emerging technology, and then when you rewrite the rules for that, you don't want to wind up with unintended, you've done other things as well as what you thought you did, so to speak. So it's a challenge.
Yes. All right. We'll be looking for that one. Our next item is a proposed ordinance amending Chapter 138 of the Pinellas County Land Development Code regarding the coastal storm area.
Yes, this is more of a one about how to better define the coastal storm area. We had it kind of simply done before based on some elevation and some storm surge, and sort of redefined it. But what would happen would have been that you would have had an island, and part of the island would be in the storms area and not in the storm area. And it made sense that you'd have the whole island area all treated the same way. So these definition changes are going to make it more consistent, sort of trying to simplify a whole complicated package that we had. But basically, we're looking at those areas that will be threatened by a storm all be included in the storm area for our planning purposes. So it means then our policies would be a little bit different for how you permit development in a storm area than it would be for a non-storm area. We want to be a lot more careful with how you permitted, things to happen.
Right. Okay. The final ordinance item is a proposed ordinance amending Chapter 166, the Water and Navigation Regulations of the Pinellas County Land Development Code. This was an interesting item, I thought.
Yeah, and it sort of is more of a cleanup of the procedures of how we do things, and putting it all in one place and recognizing that how you do the permitting of this is tied to some other things. So we wanted to kind of consolidate all into one package. So it's again one of those ones that sort of comes on the heading of a little bit of a housekeeping action.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. And they were changing some things from back in I think it was the 50s,
yes,
was it?
Right. Yes.
Just cleaning that up. Yeah.
Making it very contemporary.
Yes, exactly, because those things don't apply anymore.
Right.
Our final item is a proposed resolution rescinding the development order for the Trinity Community's development of regional impact. Tell us about this.
This is one in the North County. We have a Trinity development. It's part in Pinellas County, and most of it is in Pasco County. And
we have a map?
We have a map here, so you can see this is the county line, Pasco County being the north. See, all of this area is all in Pasco County, and then this little bit is in Pinellas County. So the conclusion was that basically now that everything's been done that should be done in the south area here, connected Pinellas County, so Trinity Boulevard was built. Not too many people know that, but the developer actually was the one that built Trinity Boulevard for us, taking it from East Lake over to State Road 54. But then in addition to that, the way this was developed and all the environmental protection put in place, there really isn't a need to continue that being part of what they call the development of regional impact. So the action is to kind of take that out of the package now, and we'd still have good regulations on it, but it would no longer be considered part of the development of regional impact as these are. It sort of simplifies things, because right now anything they did up here also had to have the conclusion, even though it's in Pasco County, had to have the involvement of Pinellas County with public hearings and the rest, and it just seemed like an unnecessary set of steps to do. So therefore they're talking about then pulling this piece out of the DRI.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We had a huge agenda.
We sure did.
Made it through.
We did.
And as we mentioned earlier, the public hearing items we discussed are scheduled to be heard during the public hearing portion of the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting beginning at 6:30 p.m. on April 26th. Please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello and welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me, as always, is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us again, Brian.
Yes, it's good to be here again.
Today we're going to talk about the subject of setbacks. Brian, what are setbacks?
Well, it's interesting. It's all a part of zoning, and you have the building code that controls everything inside, say, a house or a structure, and then the zoning kind of controls everything outside, plus, of course, the uses that go on in the house or the building. So the setbacks are all part of that control outside in terms of where everything goes. We can kind of get into some graphics, but that's basically the purpose to it.
Okay, so we have a graphic to display what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think we went over another program what these different numbers mean, but R1 is a single-family zone. So I've got a picture of a house here, and this is usually the nicer zone. It's got like 9,000 square feet of property all around it. So then what happens is you have what they call here's the road across the front, usually in typical subdivision with a driveway coming in. And so then on the front, you usually always have about 25 feet in the front for R1, which means the structure has to be set back that far. Even the garage front has to be that way. And then on each side, it's 8 feet. That means that the structure has to be 8 feet away from the property line. And then in the back, you've got a little more room here. Some people think I'd surprised that it's only 10 feet, but that means all the structures have to be 10 feet back, and usually there's more room than that in the back, because people usually try and put the house toward the front, and so the 25 feet is the more governing thing like that.
Okay.
But you can see, therefore, so it's all about the property line is around here, and from the property line into the structure. But you can see you've got a lot of room to move around. Now, if you've got like a lot like this one, it's maybe, it could be 90 feet wide even. You can see you've got a lot of room in the middle to work with.
Right.
You know, but if you go to like the next slide there, the R3, just give you an idea of things. This is a smaller set of lots. R3 are smaller, like 6,000 square feet. And therefore you've got shorter distance in the front. You can see 20 feet in the front setback, and then 6 on each side here, 6 feet. And that means, again, no structure in here at all. And you might be able to have something stick out like a chimney or something, but generally speaking, it's got to be the structure itself. And in the back, it's 10 feet again. But you could see, like, you pretty much therefore have a clear area around, and it's got to do with the zoning. Sort of the purpose of the zoning is usually to protect not you, but you from the neighbors,
right,
or
right.
the neighbors from you. And that's where the setbacks come into. If you didn't have this, then you'd have every house up against each other. And if you've been in a city like New York City, you'll have windows here, and yet there's the windows to nowhere. It might be open up a window and there's a wall there
right.
for the adjacent lot. So this prevents that kind of situation from occurring.
Oh, okay. And our next slide.
Okay, the next slide is you get into some other variations which are really interesting. Is that this blue area would be, say, like a screened enclosure. So it means somebody says, well, I've got a patio here, and a little bit of background. If you put a patio in, patio generally wouldn't have to worry about a setback. So you might be able to put a little patio out here for a side door, and as long as it's level and just less than a foot high, you pretty much can put it all the way out here. The only limitation, however, I point out is all of these setbacks are making an assumption that you still, when you locate a house or a structure, you've got to look out for trees and drainage. So you may think that you've got a 6-foot setback here, 8 foot, but there may be a tree sitting right there that might be a big mature tree that may need to be saved. So you might have to set the house back a little bit from that, or the structure back. So that kind of said, so you could therefore go put a screen enclosure in, say, the back of your house, like it's pretty common to do. Some people do it in the front, but it's pretty common in the back. If you do this, you've got to be 5 feet from the back line, the property line here, and you've got to be 5 feet from the side. And that's why you'll see there's always room to go outside and around, that sort of thing. Okay. Usually also what happens is people are doing it for a pool. And if you want to get into the numbers, a pool has to be like 8 feet from here and 6 feet from there. It's obviously more within the screened enclosure kind of thing. But there's a lot of rules, but they're also protected, because you see, if you weren't careful, someone could put a screen enclosure out to here, and it's like having a structure right beside your house.
Oh, like okay.
You know.
Huh, that's very interesting.
Now, when it gets more interesting is when actually the shed is more complicated, because even though it's smaller and off to one side, if you put a shed in and it's, say, less than 100 feet square, meaning less than 10 by 10, and less than 10 feet high, you've pretty much got a lot of flexibility where you can put it. You could put it almost like right at the corner here, like this. And if you have a fence here, then you could put it right up against the property line. You can put your small shed, the one that's less than 100 feet. And it has to be also, the fence has to be 6 feet high. Then, however, if you don't have a fence, then this shed has to be back 2 feet in this side and 2 feet in that side. And I think the rationale that's got to do with it is so you can get around it.
Right.
So you don't have to go on somebody else's property to deal with your shed and do something with it. But it is kind of interesting that something like a shed, therefore, has got a lot more rules connected with it than actually the screen enclosure, probably because you're out further into the domain of the man's land, so to speak, like that. But I think the main thing of all of this is that the space out here is, when you move the furniture around and do anything in the house, nobody's going to care. You know, that's an example. But when you go out here, you are kind of indirectly going to impact somebody else.
Exactly.
So how you do it and how for people to see or be impacted by, that's where the zoning procedures come in. Now there's a variance procedures where you can go and say, well, I really need to do this 5 feet here, I can't this, and I've got good reasons why, a hardship. And you can go to the Board of Adjustment, and the Board of Adjustment can grant it or not grant it depending on your argument that you make. But I think the other point is, though, all this setback has to do with, the whole subdivision might have been laid out where there was drainage swale through here, maybe like a slope down area.
Right.
So water could flow here or along the back. So that's all part of when you get authorized to put a structure in somewhere, you go in for the approval. It's not just about the numbers alone, it's also about what the drainage looks like, and again, some mature tree or something else they're trying to watch out for.
So let's say a homeowner is planning or thinking about an addition. Should they start investigating setbacks and things like that if they were, let's say, going to add on to the back end here? They have to consider that, obviously.
Yes. They would, if they, for instance, contracted with someone to do it, then that individual is going to get with the county, or for that matter, a municipality, and it's going to kind of find out what the rules are, that sort of thing. But if you're doing it yourself, then you really want to go in, first of all, find out what you can and can't do, so you don't go too far with things, because you don't want to make an assumption. You could put a big, nice, real screen porch in and find out that you can't do that. You made an investment of a few $100s to sort of do some planning that you really now can't even do the project.
Now, does this apply to decks as well? Any structure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, because what happens is, if it goes up, the rule is it goes up a foot. And usually a deck's higher than that, but it may not be. But if it's higher than a foot high off the ground, that's when you start becoming a structure, and then you have to fit all the requirements.
Okay.
Now, what happens is, again, you can have a little deck that's higher, and maybe you're into the setback a little bit, but then you can go to the Board of Adjustment and say, well, I'm only doing a deck 2 feet high and all this sort of thing. But then what you can generally find is, if you would have a deck that's, say, 6 feet high, and all of a sudden you can see over the fence of the neighbors, and if you go to the public hearing to the Board of Adjustment, the neighbors may be there with you, pointing out why it isn't a good idea.
Right.
So this is all that what I meant about the zoning's here to protect you from yourself and from the public and so on like that. So a lot of public process involved in this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've always wanted to have a tree house in a tree that I have in the backyard, so I have to come and discuss the zoning about that.
Yeah,
I don't think it would be zoned for my neighborhood, I don't think.
Tree house is really interesting. I don't remember too much about the rules about them, but I do know there's some rules connected with them you have to watch out for. Yeah.
All right, I'll keep that in mind. Well, thank you, Brian. As always, very interesting discussion.
Yeah, it was good to talk about it.
Yeah. Please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200. Hello and welcome to Planning Near You. I'm Libby Bowling with Pinellas County Communications. Joining me is Brian Smith, the Director of the Pinellas County Planning Department. Thanks for joining us again, Brian.
Good to be here again.
Good. Planning Near You is designed to explain upcoming recommendations about plan amendments, rezoning proposals, and code changes. These issues will be public hearing items during an upcoming Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting. Well, we have several items that are interesting on today's agenda.
Yes, we do. Some general points to be made.
Yes, let's get started.
All right.
Our first item is a request for a zoning change from R3 Single Family Residential to P1A Limited Office and Professional, and a request for a land use change from Residential Urban to Residential Office Limited on a vacant parcel containing approximately 0.39 acres located on the north side of Curlew Road, west of Fisher Road in Palm Harbor. Now, we've seen this item before.
Correct. It's gone to the County Commission and back again, and this is 19. This is the North County areas, Curlew Road, and between Belcher and US 19 is where the parcel is. Kind of see a little better on the next slide. This is the land use plan, all the yellow being the residential. And over here is to the east would be US 19, and over here is Belcher Road, and this being Curlew Road, and we're on the north side of there. So you can see on the plan, it's all shown as residential all through there, low density kind of residential. When you go to the next slide, however, you'll see that an existing situation with the aerial, you'll see some things like other kind of uses, non-residential, daycare centers and that sort of thing, offices there. But they're more focused over this side or over on that side. They're not in the middle area. And so the proposal is to put a medical office here, and you've got residents surrounding it. So you've got a very kind of traditional debate or conflict that goes on. It's kind of felt that this is a busier section of Curlew Road because you're going from US 19 through some commercial up here. You go west, you hit Belcher Road, so it kind of is a busy area with some limited access to it. So what happens is someone might say we want to put non-residential through here, but then you've got all these median limitations, which isn't really good. You can't pretty much go this way and make a left turn in, as an example. So the situation is, what do you do here? So the idea was maybe long-term you could have either residence or office. And so therefore the proposal is to go office. The conflict you get into is, do you spot it now, or do you let it happen naturally from one end to the other, and you don't sort of compromise, stick an office in the middle and have surrounded by single family, and then maybe you're sort of not having a conflict, but you kind of just have a mixture of uses that sometimes preferred not to have. So that's the case is going before the board, and the local planning agency took it up and saw how complicated it was. So we'll have to see. It's been to the board once already, Board of County Commissioners.
All right. Our next item is a request for a zoning change from R2 Single Family Residential and AE Agricultural Estate Residential to AE Agricultural Estate Residential, and a conditional use to allow for the expansion of the horse riding stable to occur in the area proposed for rezoning, which contains 0.37 acres, and the entire parcel contains approximately 2.5 acres, located on the south side of 126th Avenue North, east of 95th Street North. Now this is an interesting case, isn't it?
It really is. It's kind of, well, first of all, we're looking at a little south of Ulmerton Road. Here's the Lake Seminole area here, and so the next slide kind of shows a little bit better, but you can see here's the railroad track for CSX way over here, and this is that bypass canal for Seminole here, and Ulmerton Road is up here. So this is, you can see, pretty well established residential area that used to be very rural and used to have horses and mixture like that. So what happens is this parcel here is still one big piece and continues to have horses on it. And and it's surrounded by residential. So what you find is some people like the horses and some people don't like the horses. So the conflict you get into is, how do you sort that out? So this property owner over the years has done a number of improvements on the property. They sort of, things like, for instance, you would want to remove the waste off the property daily or weekly or something like that, depending on what it is, change out the dirt, do a lot of things like that to make this still not impacting the surrounding area in terms of smell and that sort of thing like that. Also, you don't really have any access issues because you're accessing down here, so you're not really affecting the residence area. And it's pretty much, you could have upwards of 20-some horses on the property being taken care of, and then they go somewhere else for their exercise. They have some limited there, but it's more a matter of coming up with a set of regulations, if you want to call it limitations, to make this horse activity not conflict with the surrounding neighbors. And I think they pretty much, that was the intent of having this case, was to not only have some rezoning in the front, but also put some limitations here, so basically that you sort of protect the neighborhood. And that's pretty much what's going forward to the board. Now you can see here, this is all residential all around there. And so to have this as agricultural is left over from another era, so to speak. We had a lot more agriculture and citrus and horses and that sort of thing in the county, but it still seems to be workable. And some of the people, even though they live in an urban county, they like the idea of having horses nearby. So it's got some traction in the neighborhood for acceptance. There are still some people that or at least one person for sure having a conflict with it, but so we'll see what the board decides with it.
And this goes to the ability to people use the land the way it originally was used, and apparently this land has been used in this way for years, since the mid-60s, I believe. Right.
You're transitioning from, they call it like grandfather uses and that sort of thing, and so you've always had horses on the property. So that kind of continues on, but then what can you do to make it work for the future in terms of surrounding properties? That's what we're trying to do now.
And staff goes over those and recommends some conditional uses and things like that.
Right, yeah, how you get in and off the property, how you use it, and how you buffer around it, and that sort of thing.
All right, well, we'll see what happens.
Yep, we'll see.
Our next item is a request for a zoning change from C2, General, Retail, Commercial, and Limited Services, to R3, Single Family Residential, and a land use change from Recreation Open Space to Residential Urban with an Institutional Community Center overlay, a conditional use to allow the dispensing of alcoholic beverages in association with a fraternal benevolent organization in a residential zone, special exception to allow for the approval of a fraternal club in a residential zoning district, and variances to allow the property to be accessed via a private ingress-egress easement, and to allow for the dispensing of alcoholic beverages within 750 feet of a church for a parcel of land containing approximately 2.37 acres located east of 68th Street North and north of 38th Avenue North. That was a mouthful. That's a lot of things, isn't it?
Actually, it's an example of how in zoning is intended to protect the surrounding area from what's going to go on a given property. And sometimes that gets really complicated.
Yes, it does. And
but
even including the use of alcoholic beverages.
Right. But it all works. And it sounds complicated when you list it, but also, again, is you need those provisions to make some of these things work. So anyway, so we're way down here in the Tyrone area, if you want to call it that, of Pinellas County unincorporated area. And you can see here, this is 66th Street here, this is 38th Avenue here. So it's tucked away back inside this area. This is the parcel here, and it's recreation open space in the plan because it was previously a Little League ball field area. And then it's going from the commercial to the residential to allow for all these extra stipulations that can be added on. But you can see, therefore, you've got a mobile home park to the north. You've got all kinds of other uses surrounding it. But you can also see this parcel's kind of locked in the middle of a lot of, there's no obvious way to get into it, which is part of those other stipulations. The next slide kind of shows us a little bit what we're dealing with here. You can see all these other uses surrounding it. They're all different types. So it's not so much necessarily a conflict of use necessarily, because they're all mixed together, although you want to be careful about that. But you are changing from a Little League field to then an Elks Club that would then, have things going on that would be, I'm not going to say festivities, but, more of an Elks Club kind of activity where they got a lot of social gatherings and things. So what happens is the ball field had its own set of coming and going impacts. You still had a lot of people coming and going to the site and the sort of impacts on the surrounding area. So in that sense of the word, I think some of the people find this is acceptable in that context too. So what you're dealing with is how do you get to and from the property, and then this parcel has some very limited access to it, so you want to also have to provide for drainage and drainage easements along the same corridor. So that's where another stipulation comes on. They wanted to serve alcohol on the property because of being an Elks Club. There was also how late do you have it open. We're trying to follow a similar time period to what it was for the Little League function when it was there with the ball fields. And then you want to make sure when you get out here that you've got improvements that would handle the traffic, that sort of thing. So it makes it a pretty complicated set of things. It seems like everybody's concerns are taken into account with that list you read off in the beginning of this item, but we'll kind of wait and see with the public hearing if there's any more that will come up. Oh, and the other is you might have churches nearby. When you have a church nearby and you're going to serve alcohol, that sort of thing on the property, then you also have to work with the church and get a variance for that purpose. You can't have it normally within 750 feet unless there's an okay about that. So it just does, we went through the whole list and it seems like everything's working now, but we'll go to the public hearing with the board and see if it still happens.
And this is a perfect, like you said, example of planning and all the variations kind of that go into it and why we do this program.
Right, and it is, and it also is an example of how as the county builds out, you can see with all these colors on it, you start having these uses more and more get in together that normally don't go together, and yet you have to make it work.
Yeah. All right, we'll see what happens with this one.
Yep, we will.
All right. The final item is a proposed ordinance amending the Downtown Historic Palm Harbor Master Plan. Tell us about this one.
This is kind of an unusual situation in that what we have here is Old Palm Harbor is very small, just like several blocks. And there's a unique set of circumstances there because it's historic in nature. So therefore we do things there we wouldn't normally do in other places because of the historic nature. It kind of drives it, gives us some rationale for it. So this proposal is to do what they call a transfer of development rights. Normally we do that for environmental land to keep development off environmental land, we transfer that development right off to an adjacent parcel that's owned by the same people, and then you can develop the residential, say nearby, or office or something like that, and you keep the development off the environmental area.
Let's stop right there. What is a development right? Is that an inherent thing that a property owner has when they, and it's planned that way?
Most properties have it, not all, for instance, but say for those properties that do, and it's a wetland or something like that, then you'd not want to let them develop that wetland, so you transfer some amount, say 1 unit an acre or something like that, off of it onto another piece of property. But it isn't always the case. Some environmental lands don't have any development rights, so that's when it gets complicated.
Okay.
But when they do, you can transfer them off to sort of take the pressure of development off. It gives them some credit, that sort of thing. So, however, in Old Palm Harbor, this isn't about environmental lands. This is about the fact that someone wants to do a little bit more with one piece of property, and maybe another property they also own in the same district they wanted to do less with. So therefore they can move some of their development rights, either floor area or number of units, from one parcel over to the other one. But they actually have to own both parcels, and it has to be still meeting all the requirements of the parcel it goes to. So it gets really, one of those things gets kind of complicated.
And what we're talking about is, let's say, office space, square footage of office space. There is a limitation, let's say, on one piece of property, and they have not used up their amount of office space in the other property.
Right.
So they're transferring that usage of, let's say, office space over to another property.
And it's something I don't know we'd want to open up for the rest of the county, because you can see it'd be very complicated. People are sitting there saying, this is the zoning, this is what can happen on it, and all of a sudden things could double on them or something like that. The surrounding area wouldn't like that. But in this Old Palm Harbor district, it's all packed in there, and its development is still going to occur within that block and that sort of thing, or a couple blocks. Therefore, it kind of works. But again, I'm not sure it would be something you want to apply countywide, so it's just unique to this district now. But it does give you some opportunity. So if you've got a business that wants to expand, but they sort of hit the limit, but everybody thinks it's okay to expand, this is a way to do it. But that you've moved it from another parcel in the same district, moved the development.
And again, they have to meet those limitations, overall limitations and restrictions.
Right. You still have to meet the setback requirements, the height requirements, that sort of thing. You might still then be able to have a little more development. So let's say the floor area might be 0.4 limit. You might be able to go over that a little bit because you're transferring in, as an example.
Okay.
So.
All right, Brian, interesting program today, I think. We'll see you.
Different.
Yeah, we'll see you again next time.
Okay.
All right. And as we mentioned earlier, the public hearing items we discussed are scheduled to be heard during the public hearing portion of the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners meeting beginning at 9:30 a.m. on June 14th. Please join us again as we discuss planning near you. See you next time. If you would like more information about any of the items discussed during this program, please visit the Pinellas County Planning Department's website at pinellascounty.org/plan or call 464-8200.